Welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles. Okay, with the extended cut. Nice. I am your host, Roddy Cat, with apparently a little bit of editing. I'm going to have a little more editing I'm going to have to do after the show. You can find me at Roddy Cat on Twitter, Newsletters Need on Twitter, CB Caps on Instagram. And with me tonight, replete with his own sound effects, is the sound effects man, Agent _70 on Twitter and Instagram.
What's up, everybody?
Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at?
That's what I was saying just before we went online, that I don't believe anyone online actually heard. I had a sound effect all queued up for Roddy Cat, but did not have it prepared in the soundboard. So that's something I will rectify for next week's show.
Oh, if it's anything like what you were...
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's exactly what we were discussing last week.
Oh, great.
It's short. It's to the point. It's nothing very extended.
I hate that song at this point, but okay, sure. I don't hate that song. I'll take it back, but they played it a lot. Anyway, to find out what that is...
it could also be a Neil Diamond song, so let's not push it.
I mean, it is, but...
No, but it could also be one. You know, a specific Neil Diamond song that isn't a direct reference, but you know.
Right, because I believe that was a cover of, yeah. Oh, wait.
That's what you're there, exactly.
Oh, you're thinking of that song.
Yes, exactly.
That might be even worse, even though I secretly low-key kind of like that song. Anyway,
it's one of those corny songs, ladies and gentlemen.
It's also kind
we know which song I'm probably.
It's also kind of a problem if you think about it in a little bit, but we won't get into that right now. Maybe next week. Anywho, not with us tonight. Again, tune in next week if you want to know what that particular song might is. Although you're pretty sure you already know what it is.
Exactly.
PC_Dirt on Twitter, PopCultureNet on Twitter, and PopCultureNetwork.com and the umbrella site therein. Tim DOGG98 on Twitter, the Osiris that is Ish. You can also find him at the KLIQ Nation on KLIQ NATION, thekliqnation.com. CB Cron, which is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account, if you did not know that. And also Comic Book Resources. You can go over there and read his articles, and because he's over there writing his face off.
I've read some this week.
Yeah, I was going to read one this week, but it was also going to be a spoiler of something that
we talk about today.
And then I got spoiled on Twitter about it. So thanks very much, Twitter.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that part of the story. That's awful.
Well, yeah, I said it in the back channel. That's what I was talking with one of those messages. But either way, that's just what it is. So yeah, you can find this here program on the usual suspects like CSPN.US, the Lexluthor Podcast Network.
Do it today.
Indeed. And boy, if that show idea if I ever got that show idea off to the ground, but I feel like there would be more heavy lifting on my part than I'm willing to do.
More like wrangling cats.
Well, there is that also, but yeah, that's the smart part of it. Anyway, maybe someday soon, who knows? But also, you can find this here podcast on Google Play, Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts. I know Apple had a thing, whatever, who cares? And also the Lexluthor Podcasts Network's SoundCloud page, but also, of course, Spotify. Go check us out on those spots, with the exception of SoundCloud. No, check us on SoundCloud, but maybe rate us on those other places, I should say.
Yes, rate us. Give us 5 stars.
Like, oh man, they took too long for the intro. 5 stars. That kind of stuff. You know. If you're gonna complain, give us 5 stars. If you're gonna complain, don't do anything. I don't know. Either way, we're gonna get into the comic books of the week, starting with I guess we decided on Young Justice number 8, and I kind of almost wish I had the stinger for the show for it, but I don't. Even though they're only related by name, basically.
Yeah, I read this so, it's hard to characterize this as reading because I had been spoiled as to what the story's main import was and was reading for that point. So I don't know too much of the background. I mean, the background is set. So
We've talked about it, and yeah, there was really not much to it. They're lost in the multiverse.
right, they find themselves in a different part of the multiverse. I'm not even sure why.
Wow, because they all came together on a different world. It was a thing in the first couple of issues.
That I remember, and it's still going on.
Yeah, well, it was, but then they got thrust out of there because of the people didn't want them there no more, and they didn't want to send them home. So that's how they got lost in the multiverse. So they're basically a hair away from being DC's Exiles.
Exiles. That's what I was gonna say. This is very much an Exiles type story.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting in that point, but not so much because it's business. But I don't know. I've been enjoying this so far, and this was a fairly fun issue. It's basically them on the current world, which is World 3. I don't know which world that is because my DC multiverse knowledge is nearly non-existent. Let's say I'm totally honest about it, but it's not a good world. Let's put it this way, and they're not faring that well, or they're barely faring well.
Right. This is actually one of the better known Earth variants. It's not necessarily that you remember the Earth variant number, but you remember what's important about this particular.
That's also true. Yeah.
And what's important about it is that this is the home of the Crime Syndicate, alternate version of the Justice League. And that's the important part that I think most people would remember. And that's really where this story starts. Where we have alternate versions of the Young Justice team specifically, not just dealing with the Justice League variants or alternates or counterparts. We have the counterparts of Young Justice running around in Earth 3, and I don't know if that's the where we left off in the last issue, but that's where we definitely start off in this issue.
They had just gotten there in the last issue. So at the end of last issue, they had just gotten there, basically. And then,
alrighty.
Yeah. So going into this, but the main takeaway from this issue, outside of them being here, is we come to find out that Tim Drake has a new code name. We're not going to tell you what it is because one is kind of obvious as he's had it all his life.
It's lame. That's my opinion. That is my opinion.
So we had a nice little discussion.
We
had a nice little discussion about this prior to the show. That actually was recorded. You may or may not ever get to hear that though. And I don't know. We have differing opinions about the whole secret identity thing.
Right.
Well,
kind of
we're kind of similar in this whole secret identity in certain cases.
Right. What I was going to say though is its root. It has its root. The opinions have their root in different aspects of where superhero comics and superhero stories are nowadays,
and sadly wrestling.
And
why? But
I think it's at least it's the closest analog to places where people actually go by different names. Even though one of the points that Roddycat brought up is that nowadays even those wrestlers that go by stage names generally, not all of them, not ultimately all, not every single wrestler, but generally have their civilian identities, their normal names listed somewhere for general consumption, like the internet, like on somebody's Wikipedia page.
Right. You can guarantee you'll be able to find most, if not all of them, by that though. Given that being that the case, like you,
right, and it's and part of it is, as we were just talking about, it's a way of treating secret identities and code names They're sides of the same different, two sides of the same coin in a sense, and how I don't think this particular change in code name should stick, although it might, given DC's proclivity, you know, what is it that Eclectic used to say? Oh yeah, that's right. DC stays losing. Shout out to Eclectic. I'm gonna make sure to tweet him and let him know that we dropped a strong reference on tonight's show. But
come on, we know he's listening. No, we're not.
I think
I don't know.
If anything, Eclectic has listened, but I don't know if he's listening currently.
Yeah, I would.
So, but in any event,
and yeah, part of the argument was kind of stemmed in the fact that there are other, without going too far into it, there are other superheroes in that same universe that have had a similar name change to the point that's some would argue will be kind of on the nose for them. I'm trying to be kind of vague because, like I said, it just came out yesterday, and I want to spoil it for people who want to read it.
Right. I mean, we can ring the spoiler bell, but it's really not worth the trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
because that means we got to get the Hunchback to climb up into the bell tower to ring the spoiler bell.
You've done that with sport a couple of times, so that's not really saying much. But
get in the tower. Get in the tower and ring it.
He seems to get up there pretty fast. But anyway, but like I said, yeah. But the point is like it's kind of similar to that, or spies that use code names kind of situation, and it was a whole thing. We really don't have to get that far back into it, and I'm kind of in agreement with Agent 7 to where I do think this one's going to stick, but if it doesn't stick, I'm not surprised because I don't know what the impetus of it was behind the scenes outside of the fact that, okay, there are a bunch of Robins. Or let me phrase that. There have been a bunch of Robins. Like, obviously, all of them are not going by Robin. There's enough that are still going by Robin to need a distinction, I guess. Mm-hmm. And that being there's one. And all the other Robins have taken other code names. And I would suspect that was probably like, well, you know what? This is why we did this one, just to kind of keep that thing going, as opposed to because on the other side of the aisle, there's two Spider-Man, and yeah, you can tear them apart if you see them, but there's I'm sure there would be some confusion to some people.
Until Miles, although they have been giving him a growth spurt, he's still appreciably or at least noticeably younger, depending on
for sure,
depending on the artist's rendition. So you can definitely tell, like you said, when you see them, not only in costume but also in general size.
Right now, unfortunately, unless you are sight impaired, that would become a big a thing also. So that's
right. You'd have to listen to them speak.
Which
and then you'd have to have both of them to compare. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, so there's factors, but that is a slightly specified case. But the point was like, yeah, there have been characters with similar names, and they want to distinguish. Obviously, and I guess Spider-Gwen would probably be in a part of that too, because although they've never ever called her Spider-Woman or Spider-Girl, so that's
they have actually.
They have?
They have, but they got away with it because they've maintained her in the Earth 65 continuity up until now.
True, but I don't remember them calling
Spider-Woman.
They did. I don't remember them calling.
They called her Spider-Woman in her.
You're right. Yeah, I was about to say there was one or two times because they it felt like they were, even in the original run, they were kind of staying away from it, but except for in terms of other people in the world.
Other people. Yeah, I think if you go back and read it, they have her name.
No, I do. I do recall. Yeah,
no, but they have her name Spider-Woman like in headlines and other things. But I don't remember too many characters referring to her as Spider-Woman.
It didn't come up that often. Is what I'm saying.
Exactly. So, that's definitely true in that case. So
that's kind of how they kind of got around that, whether it was intentional or not. But that would be another similar case of the name change thing. So regardless, we spent way too much time on this. Young Justice was a pretty good issue, and that was despite what else was going on in the issue, that's kind of the quote unquote bigger takeaway of what happened in the issue. And I'm still going to go back on my assertion that, as I have my notes, Tim Drake, and I said, I just haven't noticed because I said this earlier. Tim Drake, arguably the smartest Robin there has been. Despite of what Damian might think of himself, you would think he, of all people, would have come across this particular name change well before now, as opposed to going into another universe where a similar, where his alter ego of that universe happens to adopt it, and he's like, huh, okay. So I'm like, but hey, what are you gonna do? All right, moving right along.
Just very quickly, how long has Superboy been going by this very retro look?
In this book, in this issue, so that's the funny thing. He kind of had it from the beginning, but not to this effect. So basically, what happened? So real quickly on that one is he was already where everybody met up, which was Gym World.
Right.
He was living at a farmer, and he wasn't dressed up. He wasn't this sharp in distinct. So he basically didn't have the jacket. His hair wasn't the way it was. It was kind of like Young Justice, the cartoons Young Justice, more like in his hairstyle. But somewhere in, say, what issue is this? 8, right? So somewhere between issues 4 to 6, I was actually say probably like 6 to 7. That's when he pretty much adopted this, because this was
recently. Okay.
Yeah, so there was a fairly reason where he just went back to his old 90s look.
That's so retro.
And it was kind of out of the blue then too, because it's like, wait, where did he even get the jacket from? He probably had it with him. I think he did. He had it with him when he initially arrived on them, when they explained it, when he arrived on Gym World. But he had changed his hair to
he found some time to hit the barber.
Apparently, somewhere in the midst of their dimension hopping, he hit the barber and
found a costume that's very similar to his 90s style. So
actually, I want to say when they left Gym World, he might have had it with everything except for the haircut.
Okay,
I believe. I can't remember, because I know he definitely had the shirt, and jeans. So yeah, that was a weird one, because it was like the rest of it just kind of boop, and he was just back to his old 90s self, without the attitude, mind you. Well, with less of the attitude, thankfully. Because if anybody knows of Superboy back then, of that one, he was kind of a jerk. Anyway, actually, speaking of, while we're on this point, before we go to the next book, I will go ahead and say really, really quickly that I finished Young Justice season 3. Generally, I liked it. Has nothing to really do with the book.
All right, I'm gonna send up I'm gonna send up Quasimodo and ring the spoiler bell.
Wow, that's
doesn't sound like Notre Dame. I know.
I was about to say, yeah, that's a different bell than he's used to ringing, but yeah, it works. Yeah, we won't get too far into that either way. But all I'm just gonna say is like, yeah, there were some weird resolution choices. Because we had talked about this like probably after the show a couple times, and I think we may have brought up. I know we brought it up last week because you had already finished it. But yeah, first of all, the whole Lobo's the whole thing with Lobo and his quote unquote offspring. I'm like, okay, sure, that was the only way that was gonna go. Although actually, I take it back, because they could have that could have grown into a new character, or more specifically a current Teen Titan, but that didn't happen. But the resolution of a couple of plot points didn't go the way you would think it would have, which, for good or for ill, it was just weird.
What I was saying is that the particular storyline that we're referring to, and I did ring the spoiler bell, so you are forewarned, but there were hints that the writers of Young Justice had interwoven elements of the Judas contract into the storyline. Mm-hmm. Given that it's technically not a Titans story in the strictest sense of the word, that this is a hybrid Young Justice and Titans type, cartoon,
right? Basically, Young Justice was basically a offshoot of Teen Titans, regardless. Maybe a different one. Which it was always weird that Young Justice as a team was a thing when the Teen Titans was already wrong, and then there was also Titans, which was pretty much the same team.
Right. So ultimately, what we're referring to is how the Judas Contract story gets resolved traditionally in the comics, has gotten resolved traditionally in Teen Titans centric media, but in this particular story, it is resolved very differently.
Right. Which, as you were saying, Agent 70 might have been intentional on their part because it's kind of well worn.
Sure.
And as you said, and as you also said, has a fairly recent iteration
Right.
of that story.
Right. Bear in mind, the story is 35 plus years old, and there's plenty of reference material out there for people to peruse when it comes to finding out what the ultimate resolution of the story is. But as Rodicat mentioned, we're literally coming off of relatively recent animated DC movie within the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't see it when it first came out. I know that it was running on Hulu up until recently. I don't know if it still is, but I only knew because I only found out it was on Hulu because I only recently gained access to Hulu. So that being said, that's probably the most recent, but for many of us and many even children, they may have come up reading or even teenagers, they may have come up watching the Teen Titans cartoon, and the story's right there.
Yeah, or even granted, this was a very, very loose interpretation that was in Teen Titans Go, and it was kind of making, obviously it was a parody show, so it was kind of making fun of certain aspects, but still they alluded to it on that show. But so yeah, there was that. But the thing I didn't mention to you earlier was I found it funny that once again Khary Payton passed the torch to himself with that story, which that was the whole thing. That was the other thing that always that kind of that was kind of crazy about this season. I was like, wait, so the last season you had it to where there were secrets about the makeup of the team and a secret operations going on. So you just turn around and do the exact same thing on a bigger scale, and thinking it was like, we just did it to protect you guys, and we didn't think something happened, except for that happened last season. People found out. In fact, in fact, people almost widely found out. So I was like, why would you do that again? And I thought it was cool to see like Calder as the head of the Justice League, but I also thought that was really strange.
Mm-hmm.
And with the co-chair of Wonder Woman, and again, who ends up being the chair going into the next season, that's also a weird one, and also voiced by Khary Payton. So that was also funny. But that was like, there were some weird choices that they made that was like, I'm not sure what to think about. It was cool, but it was like, that was weird. I mean, even though part of it was like, okay, in service of, if you think about it, I was like, I guess some of this was in service of whatever secret missions they were doing in the background, and come from background. I was like, well, clearly he could keep a secret and he knows how to run a team, so we can put him in the spot as we can put him in the inner circle. Uh-oh.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
No worries. Just 1 second. Just my video feed cut out because I had to just make some quick adjustments. No biggie. Right,
but those watching the video can see this wonderful shot of Agent 70 in a stoic pose. So anyway, that's pretty much that. If you haven't, if you have DC Universe, then yeah, you will may or may not catch up on it. But overall, it was still good. I'm kind of curious as to what they're going to do next season. That one episode they had where Wally came back was kind of touching. I don't want to say out of the blue because I imagine they wanted to have that closure in there at some point, but it was like, because I know there was a thread of it kind of going through this. Like I said, there was like 2 or 3 different B and C plots going through the whole season, which like Agent 70 and I were kind of talking about behind the scenes. Like, I don't know how they're going to resolve this, or if they were going to resolve this. One of those being the Judas contract one, going into the next season. But they kind of wrapped up a lot of that stuff,
right? Which was surprising because the Judas contract story could definitely have sat until the next season and laid in the weeds, literally waiting to strike. And it was just odd that was basically used up kind of as a throwaway.
And really enough, still some of the threads are there. Well, in a certain way, some of the threads are away, because there's one thread that being the bad guys, and their things that are still going behind the scenes. Now, yeah, the whole thread of Judas contract is pretty much a done deal, but there's still like a.
I mean, I was about to say there's the whole. There's the whole revenge for trying to put someone into our rank story,
right?
But that's generally the over the umbrella story of Young Justice against the Light. So. We're all going to see where they go with this. We'll see what other stories they create to move this along. I don't know if they're going to go beyond the 4th season, though.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, because we do know they're doing the 4th season. I would imagine if we start seeing them kind of wrap up the Light, then yeah, we can probably say that this is probably going to be it. And I assume they're going to get a chance to do it cleanly, hopefully, because I don't know how long they had planned to go with Young Justice. We knew before season 3 was a thing that, like, hey, they had season 3 plans. We didn't know about season 4 up until they announced season 4 was a thing that they were working on.
Right.
So I don't know. They could possibly do a 5 season, and that, but if that's the case, then that would be a solid run. But if they get through 4 and end it there, that's all right. I don't think. I don't suspect at this point they're going to get too much more than maybe the next season.
Sure.
And that's only because I feel like things behind the scenes are probably not going to let it happen the way things couldn't happen,
especially it being on DC Universe.
Well, yeah, exactly. With that
being the main driving force of a lot of things that we're probably going to see happen with DC related television.
Yeah, so which is what I was thinking. So who knows on that point? But anyway, let's get back to the comics rule, and away from Young Justice, because I think we've spent that one. What did we say? King Thor?
Sure.
King Thor #1. I'll let you take the lead on that one.
Sure. I mean, the cover itself. And for folks who have not seen the cover of King Thor #1 out this week, reminds us that we have been following Jason Aaron's Thor epic for 7 years, which is incredible in today's comics.
Yeah, sadly.
It is. But if you think about it, the Simonson run didn't last this long. Many runs don't last as long. We're talking not quite Claremont level, but we're getting we're getting into not the same conversation, but something very close to it.
I mean, true, but the difference being is that one, this is consecutive. Despite minus all the restarts, which kind of for whatever dumb reason,
which really only messes with numbering, but yeah,
exactly. I was about to say you got a ghost in your room.
No, that is the wind. The weather pattern here in New York has changed drastically over the course of several hours.
That's good. I think.
Well, it's just it's cool and windy now, and I had the window open because it was warm. It was a warm day today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sure was. Even down here. But anyway, so yeah, but my point real quick was that back in the day, yeah, we had one volume that was kept on going. Like the Simonson run was in the middle of at least the same volume, as opposed to what we get now is like different volumes and whatnot. And it changed hands consecutively with one creative chain to another, and just kept on going with numbering,
Right.
as opposed to how it's done now.
Right. So despite the stopping and starting nature of comics and new number ones, that's what we're referring to, for some good reasons, especially with Jane Foster Thor kind of needing a clean break from what had come before. We understand that, but at least from a marketing standpoint. But
at the same time, they used to do that kind of stuff because they didn't change much when, like, say, Throg was in the book. That little section where Throg had an
right,
arc.
but also relaunching. Yeah, exactly. Relaunching wasn't a common thing back then.
Right.
What I was going to say is this is the culmination of a 7-year-long story that started with parallel stories being told in the Thor book, with the same creative team, Jason Aaron on scripts and Esad Ribic on art, and it involved the King Thor future storyline, and we're actually seeing the King Thor storyline having its own dedicated book and its own wrap up, and it's actually it's pretty impressive that if you've been on this train for as long as I have, and if you've been reading it from its inception, it's impressive that we've gotten to this point and we've seen so much about the character change and the evolution of the character specifically. Well, not even related to the character's changes in the MCU, but in just we've seen King Thor type stories before. And to see this particular way to have time actually pass, obviously, it's a comic book trope to see a character, millions or even billions of years later. That's something that we would see in comics, but to see how the character has evolved over time, and with the benefit of time travel, kind of go back and teach his younger self, hey, there's certain ways of being and doing that you can learn from my that you can learn through my mistakes. It's pretty cool. So ultimately what we have in this issue is what's happening at the end of time for this universe specifically. And we have the return of a character we thought long gone. And, thanks to comics, we can see that.
Right.
Not trying to spoil everything here for you folks. But
no, it honestly, basically what you've said in the beginning of this and the cover itself pretty much gave. I mean, if you thought about it a certain way, you can kind of see the steps of A to B going to this person showing back up.
Mm-hmm.
So, which honestly kind of threw me. Well, I'm not up on the Thor stuff, but even I was like, they've thrown this person's name around enough in this issue to where something was going to have to happen, and sure enough, it did.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was a thing here. Although the weirdest thing for me about this one is, like, if it wasn't for that reveal at the end, this almost seemed like this could have been a one and done. Like, I know it wasn't set up that way, but it's like the way things kind of just progressed and got into the certain point of the issue before the reveal. It's like, shoot, if you just went ahead and be like, hey, well, and that's into the story, and this was like an epilogue type situation, it would have worked out that way. And I'm like, all right, cool, that's it.
Right.
Although they wouldn't have set it up just for like one issue though. And it wouldn't have been just a regular size issue if that were going to do that, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is definitely. I definitely see where you went with that. you could see this as as you said, a giant sized one shot, but not as a regular sized issue. So, um, I thought it was an interesting way to bring the character back, considering the supposed state of the future.
Right, and I know you, having read through all of that stuff, knows.
Well, what I was going to say is they establish something at this point that the pantheons of gods have all gone away as well. And
well, yeah, I mean that part aside,
right.
I mean with the status of the person who shows up at the end.
Right. So that's why it's kind of interesting that this particular development happened, considering what we're supposed to think as the end of the universe. So, but it's really nice to see Ribic back on the book. The art is killer, and there's actually a pretty graphic interpretation of what happens in the book. A particular act of violence, let's say.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
Your knowledge, obviously, Asgardian god anatomy might be different.
Yeah, that's usually not how bodies work. But
it's interesting, your biology in your human anatomy courses teach you a certain length of a certain organ, and that is put to the test in this issue.
Some would argue taken out, and I'm like, wait, that's, even if that was the case, you can't really function for long with it, But then again, given how the story went, I don't think that was going to be that much of an issue,
right?
So, which goes back to a point that I was going to make, and it's like, this is, as I've said this term before, Aaron kind of putting some of his toys away. That he is, because I know there was some stuff that we talked about that got dealt with. That was that was their creative team's doing. That was created by this creative team, and one of which has been pretty much, yeah. So that's gonna be curious for the next story that we talk about, because now that I think about it, although this is in the future, so no, it doesn't. Never mind. But
I was gonna say, this is just the three Thors that Aaron's story kind of revolved around over the course of his arc, or his run on the book. We obviously have present day, we have past, and it's kind of nice that they're giving future Thor space of his own to have his resolution. So
sure. But no, I was thinking about something that would have affected another book that we were about to talk about, but it actually doesn't, because it's different time frames.
Oh, Punisher Kill Crew? No, I'm kidding.
No, actually, no. Also, there was a note. I noticed that. So King Thor has 3 granddaughters, and they're in this book also, and I assume they came out through that they were created through this
over the course of the story. Yeah, they were
right.
Yeah.
One of them has Stormbreaker, I noticed. And I'm sitting here and I saw that. I was like, where's Bill? What happened to Bill? What do you do? What do y'all do to Bill?
Along with everyone else, we kind of have an idea. So,
well, yeah, but I was like, oh no, that had me thinking. I was like, wait, what was his final fate? What happened to Bill? I don't like this.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, it is what it is on that. So yeah, that's King Thor. Unless you got something else.
Nope.
I want to pivot over to Loki.
Loki number 3.
So I know you have not read this.
I have not.
And actually, I should probably take a gander at what Dirt's got, just in case he doesn't have anything Marvel anyway. So oh yes, it does, but nothing we've talked about. So yeah, there is a interesting tie to the King Thor book, or at the very least, what it seems like. And without spoiling, I really want you to read this issue.
Okay.
And see if you got the same sense than I did. So at the end of the last issue, we found out that I will go ahead and say this part. It's kind of a spoiler, but it kind of isn't, because I think I may have mentioned it. But so Loki ends up in a certain part of the library in Omnipotent City. And I said this in passing the last time. It's called the House of Ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know any of your Marvel history, you know what that particular phrase means. And boy, do they really play on that in this issue, which is kind of interesting. I'm not going to say how, but they do. And it's kind of amusing. And they even also so there's a certain question that sometimes we have where you see characters in multiple places in the universe, and in a very kind of slight way, and I don't know if this was intentional, they may have addressed that in this issue, which is kind of amusing to me. And I enjoyed reading this for that part of it. The other part of it has to do with Nightmare, and that's a less of a point, and a potentially developing thing with the Golem Frosty that Loki has put in his place back in Jotunheim, and that's going to surely come up with something the way it's looking if this book is allowed to live. But and actually, there is something about that particular even aspect that kind of gets alluded to in the course of this issue, which I think makes this a pretty interesting read. I'm like, that was a thing I didn't think about before. Well, one, this whole Omnipotent City happened, and two, this part of the library that is arguably blatant and a blatant allusion to actual things.
Okay.
And that's all I'll pretty much say about that. But I enjoyed reading it. It was I had a smile on my face reading it because it was like, huh, okay, cool. And the only other thing that happened is like, well, Loki's got a test in front of him, and we'll see if he's well, I don't know if that was it, or that was just the first trial of many, or that was it, and we're going to go from here. But let's just say that, yeah, there's some things that might play into the King Thor part of it in a not direct way.
All right.
I will say that. So moving right along, where do you, I guess you want to get to Powers of X?
Yes, we should.
Yeah, sure.
So this is
of 10.
Yeah. So
4.
So
Powers
this
of X.
is a kind of a step back from the action that we've seen in House of X over the last 2 weeks. So we are reintroduced to a particular X-Men character, Mr. Sinister. He's never been this flamboyant.
Yes, I was going to admit, yes. I was like, this is, so I have my notes. And now for a bit of silliness, I mean Sinister. Because he was totally flamboyant in this issue, as you said, and that's it was amusing to me. I was like, oh, okay, so Hickman's just gonna step back and have a little fun, while also, going along with a little bit more exposition in the form of storytelling, in the form of story.
He definitely drops big hints that Sinister plays a big role in the story, according to, of all things, a column.
Yes, I like that. So I know you probably did the same thing. It was like, okay, well, so there's this particular page in the issue that is just text that's made up almost like solicitations, sort of without my creative thing. So you basically get the I don't know what they call them, but when you see what they talk about in the current issue, when you're like on Comixology or something like that, it's kind of a page that's set up with a series of those. Okay. And I can't remember what the name of what that's called, and that's.
I mean, essentially, what these are they're kind of like solicitations, and it's a summary of them, and what it is what they are hints that of what's to come in the story, and you have to take all this with a grain of salt, obviously. But having come to this point in the story, now that we're in the back half, we'll see how many of these really play out. So it's a pretty interesting storytelling tactic from Hickman's perspective. That was a big chunk of the book, dealing with the post scene with Xavier, Magneto, and Sinister. That was a big, that was I guess the most efficient way of telling this particular part of the story.
Right, because we knew he was involved, so that wasn't the case. What we did not see is how he got involved, and this is kind of going the length to start that, or at least
explain one stage of that. So, and that's really what this is. They're stages. We get to the current stage of the Powers of 10 book, or at least the in more recent in a more recent timeline that only involves months. We see how the Krakoa network essentially was formed.
Right. So so we basically got two different sides of a part of a thing, or a part of the history start to be explained in this issue.
And we also have the future narrative that we still have yet to fully comprehend, but involves the Phalanx.
Right. But that part aside, you can kind of see where some of the stuff that's been touched on in the past, especially with the future stuff, kind of come into being. And I'd imagine that is a part of that which we have seen some of, but to a lesser degree than some of the other stuff. I believe I might have been missing something that will probably come into play a little bit more as things go by. Because like pretty much everything in the books is stuff that's been already kind of touched upon. We just didn't know how it happened.
Right.
So there's probably no exception, but we may or may not be missing something with that part.
All right, we are in the home stretch now. There's only 4 issues left of these 2 companion series. So House of X number 5 is out next week, and we shall see what happens to the supposed current day X-Men.
Right.
When I say supposed, there's several reasons why. That may
going back to that. If I get what you're putting down, going
into this issue as well, dealing with why they recruit and the point of recruiting Sinister in the first place.
Right. And also may have possibly answered the question that I had on a specific person that shows up in the future that may or may not have been dealt with with House of X last week.
Okay.
I don't know if that's actually the case or not, but it kind of felt like it could have been the case to me. So that being said, the House of Powers of X thing keeps on trolling. Excuse me, rolling, not trolling. It could be kind of a troll, but we're not there yet.
What's next?
So let's see. Well, you throw one out. Yeah, we've read a decent number of books this week. It was actually a pretty big week of books. So let's see. How about the penultimate issue of this run of Doctor Strange?
Yeah, that book. I am going to continue my assertions, as you may or may not agree with me, that if they had finished this book and I don't say that they should have finished it in the last issue, because let's face it, I would like to believe they had somebody should have had some stuff to kind of keep going, but that's just bias. If they had finished the last couple of issues, that would have been perfectly fine with me. Obviously, this one is kind of leading up to the final issue next thing, but it was a kind of a weird pivot given where we came from to this. It's even with last issue at that.
Right.
And that was kind of a pivot on its own.
this is definitely a weird development for the character, given that we have a little bit of inside baseball knowledge because we know that this is ending with the next issue.
Right.
But at the same time, the setup for a pretty good story in the last issue is there. What happens in this issue is a pretty big change to Doctor Strange. But we know that because it's due to magic, there may be a price to be paid for the magic being invoked, not just the fact that there was a chance this particular act of magic would have backfired spectacularly or had a chance to backfire spectacularly.
Or still could.
So we shall see how this develops in the upcoming final issue of the book.
The thing that was, the thing that was weird, because I'm trying not to say strange, because, but the thing that was weird to me about this issue is like, so if you read this issue and know anything about the origins of Doctor Strange and what he was hoping to accomplish in his origin, before his origin actually kind of got over command, you would, and even I believe has been said in passing, maybe may or maybe not, in a book or two, that this would not have seemed possible once upon a time. But apparently here it is, and some would argue all this time, although it obviously it's at the behest of whoever the creator is at the time and whatever they want to do with them. That's beside the point.
Right.
So there was one particular thing that Stephen Strange is,
it's kind of core to the origin.
Right. Lost and has wanted secretly and not so secretly throughout his whole being as Doctor Strange. Just happened to get undone, but as Agent 7 said, like, yeah, clearly there's a price to this. And I feel like this with another deal that he made a couple of issues back that I think probably has been resolved regardless, but he's made some questionable decisions in the last few issues, hastily, I would argue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for good reasons, but still hastily done. Now, whether those are going to come back and just be like, well, in the next issue and be like, hey, here's all this cropped up and here's the price, that will remain to be seen. I don't feel confident in that, and that's going to stick that landing, but we don't know, because we don't know what's going to happen in this next issue.
Right. This was definitely a curveball.
Mm-hmm.
This was definitely a curveball that weighed through us. As I mentioned, especially for those of us with the knowledge that this book is ending and this volume of the book is ending in the next issue. So to see this happen, at least will bring us back for the last issue.
Right. I am happy to see that in the last page or after the last page that someone will be returning that I am happy to see again. Now, for whatever reason that person's coming back. Well, we know a reason why this person would come back, but I figured that would have been something that had been dealt with before now.
Right. And, mild spoilers, it's a character we were introduced to here in this volume. So
right.
It makes sense that we would have some sort of resolution to their story before this book transitions into whatever incarnation of Doctor Strange we see next.
If and or when that ever happens. I said this in my notes, and I don't think it is going to happen, but if this particular character ends up taking the mantle up, even though I know it wouldn't last for that long, I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if they did it, one, and I wouldn't mind seeing it, two. That's just me. I'm probably in the minority on that one. So
it would probably be different.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I would say welcome if they do it right. Especially with what's been established in this volume, with some of the mechanics that's been introduced in this article and in this volume. That is Doctor Strange number 19. We'll see. I guess 2 weeks, right? I think this has been coming out.
I don't know.
Actually, I'm not sure anymore now, because I think it was coming out bi-weekly at one point. But anyway, whenever it comes out. You want to hear some spider books?
Sure.
Yeah, a couple of Spider books and probably go rapid fire after that.
Okay.
And we'll get to some of what Dirt has, which I'm slightly shocked that he read at least one of these. Don't ask me why. Amazing Spider-Man number 29 is our next book. So the only thing I really have in my notes outside of, well, the only thing I really have in my notes is pretty much a non sequitur for my own benefit, because I'm fairly certain not many people think about this as much as I have, especially within the last couple of years, especially with Into the Spider-Verse for some reason. But regardless, it is a thing, and I'll get to that in a moment. But that being the case, so I think we pretty much as well established that there have been things in Peter's life that's pretty cyclical.
Yes. Cyclical. Yes.
And this particular issue kind of plays on that. Not only plays on it, but it just pretty much goes by the numbers. But at least they were aware of it. They acknowledge it.
Right. It's definitely it's definitely a tongue-in-cheek look at what has come before and what's sure to keep coming.
Mm-hmm. So, Peter, and especially with his relation with Mary Jane specifically, which is the crux of this issue. So, we know that Mary Jane's got this new thing, and this, again, we've seen this before. This is not a thing that hasn't, shocking enough. This has happened before. Mary Jane gets a thing. She goes off to pursue her career. Peter, helpful, but it also means that they're not.
We are deep in late 80s Spider-Man here.
Right, exactly. So, there are some folks who may not know that part, but but regardless, it still has come up, and it, fairly constantly comes up. But anyway, a thing happens. They kind of have to be apart for some other reason. Peter worries, as he tends to do. He goes to Aunt May, talks to her, and there's this whole, and then something comes up to where Spider-Man gets in the way. And in matter of fact, we have seen this, constantly, even recently in this very book, to where, especially, what was it, 25, when the whole ball of wax started with Mary Jane? Like, he was supposed to meet her, but didn't, and then she ends up going to a thing with another friend of her who shows up in this book also, and then Peter can't be there because he's off being Spider-Man, and they and things kind of rinse, wash, and repeat.
But it's also part of an evolution to both the Mary Jane character and friends and relatives and loved ones of superheroes in the Marvel universe as a whole, where there's a little bit of a modernization of the attitude towards superheroism, in that a lot of the and something that has come up in the Spencer book and something that has come up in other books, where a lot of the supporting characters who were traditionally against the superheroes putting themselves into harm's way for other people and doing what they do, it's an evolution in their attitudes towards it, and whether or not it's just sort of I don't want to say accepted, but at least tolerated.
Right, they put up with it.
It's how they cope with it is what we've actually come to in this book now, and that's specifically something that Mary Jane has dealt with a support group that has emerged in the pages of Amazing over the last several issues. So,
right, yeah, I think they even footnoted one particular I guess iteration of that group.
Right, they've appeared. So,
right.
I want to give a shout out to Francesco Manna, the artist on this book, who I don't know if we've seen too much of his art in the past, but it was solid work. It's definitely got backgrounds in it. That is direct shot taken at the regular artist on this book, whose name I can't even remember. I just know that he's not so big on backgrounds. So,
Was it Ryan Notley?
yes, Ryan Otley. Shots fired.
I know you're not particular about him being. I mean, his particular art style on this book.
It's not appealing to the eye, or at least to my eye.
Right.
So, but I definitely liked the art in this book in general. I thought it was really solid. I thought that it was a nice meld of. There's actually, from what I saw in this, a decent amount of Bagley's art in the Ultimate series. There was definitely hints of that, but definitely a solid comic book sensibility. Speaking of comic sensibilities, something that you've mentioned in your notes is that, and when I read this, I hear Martin Lawrence as Marcus Burnett in the first Bad Boys say this character's name in my head.
Funny you should bring that up, but go ahead.
Why is that?
Because I just saw the Bad Boys 3 trailer fairly recently.
Okay. So in my head, I hear this particular name being exclaimed, like shouted, and
Mike Lowry?
No, but it's just a pretty funny, because of some of the things that happen in that movie. You hear this name exclaimed, and Martin Lawrence's character has to come up with explanations very quickly.
Right.
And this character that appears in this book, I guess you had forgotten about. We last saw in Friendly Neighborhood, I believe.
Or was it this book at the end of Craven, the Craven Hunt?
Could be. I remember her more for what was happening.
Oh, you're talking about her. Oh, so Peter's sister shows up in this book,
right.
And I totally forgot about her. Period.
Not in this volume of Friendly Neighborhood. The previous, the previous volume of Friendly Neighborhood. What is now, what's it called now? The Tom Taylor book.
Friendly Neighborhood.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
What am I remembering? Is it Sensational?
Yeah, maybe.
It might be Sensational.
Maybe.
I mean, there was a book that was basically finished off, and Friendly Neighborhood came in its wake. So,
yeah,
character came up. Yeah, this
I totally forgot that
part of it. Big part of the story.
Wait, yeah, because she was introduced in that one, right?
No, she's been around for a long time, but it was confirmed in that Sensational story that that the relation was in fact true. Right. What we had all assumed was that it wasn't, that it was just a big cover story. Right.
But yeah, I was like, I remember hearing about it, and I don't think I ever actually read it or any of it, but I did some, obviously did I looked up on the wiki for her, and I was like, oh yeah, right. I do remember hearing about that, but I don't remember that being the case. And the thing that kind of messed me, well, not messed me up, but the thing that kind of threw me off about it was like when she came in.
It was Spectacular. I apologize. It was, it was the latest. Yeah, it was the latest volume of Spectacular Spider-Man.
Okay, so she's not far from, right? Okay, from being around. So yeah, so Peter's sister came in just out the, I guess relatively out the blue. We don't know. Obviously, it was for a reason, but Aunt May was there, and I was like, well, wait, if it's Peter's sister, why is he not calling her Aunt May? Like she asked if that is indeed her actual aunt. Which I think there was something that was said in the story that Peter introduced him to, but not really told him the whole story. So I don't know if so does Aunt May know if that's actually her? I don't know. That part was kind of confusing to me, and that's only because there was stuff I did not know about past dealings.
Right.
But she apparently knew it, and I would think she would know her own niece. I don't know.
It's okay.
I don't know. That whole exchange was kind of weird because it was like, Aunt May was like, just call me Aunt May. Everybody does. I'm like, well, yeah, but you're actually her aunt. So
Right, but this is tracking back to what happened in Spectacular.
right. So yeah, so like I said, and that just kind of plays on my ignorance of what actually happened back then. So yeah, but overall, that like I said, it was a nice story, and I think as you might have said in your notes about the end of it,
Right. So what we find out is that Peter had something planned for Mary Jane, but that he would have done, but for Teresa, his sister. That's
and his overwhelming sense of responsibility.
Right. God forbid that somebody dies on his watch. That's something that is well established about the character. So essentially something happened, or something would have happened. He had something planned, and that may have been a very different turn for this story.
But at the same time, it's also happened in the vein of, like I said earlier, the cyclical nature of Mary Jane and Peter's relationship. It was kind of going to go this way without that wrinkle being the case, regardless.
Eventually,
always going to be a misconnection, and that's pretty much what happened, except for they were already connected. But you know what I'm saying,
right?
So, but yeah, there's that implication is still, which also kind of has me. Well, no, it exactly doesn't, because there was a solicitation for something that we know is coming, but I suspect that's not what it seems to be. You put it that way, and that will have to do with another book that we'll probably talk about, that we can talk about this week, but something in the future of that book, I guess, or in the future of Amazing. I think I can't remember. Regardless, we'll get to that when we get to that.
Right. But yeah, flipping through this, I'm literally just flipping through this now, and I'm like, wow, backgrounds. It's a wonderful thing.
Who needs pesky backgrounds? So who needs to know where you are at all times? I
understand being economical, especially with artist time and effort. I don't know specifically if this artist renders his work digitally or not, but I know a lot of artists cheat now because they have preset settings for like cityscapes and whatnot, but it's hard to tell whether or not this artist employs that, but it's still nice to see a little bit of effort in a background. It just is.
That's fire.
Yeah, seriously.
So let us move on from that shot to it's a celebration. That being Miles Morales' 250th issue, and that it's Miles Morales Spider-Man number 10,
which is scary. I'm like, they've had 250 issues with this guy. Holy cow!
So a little background. I spent the better half of 1.5 to 2 literal hours this morning reading the wiki on the Ultimate Universe and Miles.
Okay.
For some reason, some of it I knew, some of it I didn't
kind
know.
Of refreshing the memory,
basically. And I have never actually read. Even when he appeared, I think I'm fairly certain I did not read. I was not reading Ultimate comics then.
It was one of those things where I only picked up Ultimate Fallout, his first appearance, because I was a regular comic book reader.
I think I've read that because of what happened in,
Right, exactly. And I made a point of picking up the issue. So that is as far as I can tell you about that. That's as much as I can tell you about my motivation in picking up the issue. I had understood that the Peter Parker of the Ultimate Universe was going to die. There's
a funny thing about that, which I read about during the course of that research. But
right, I was going to say, just hold the thought, because
I'm never going to say it, but I'm just saying that piece.
What I was going to mention is I endeavored to catch up on Ultimate Spider-Man back then because of what was happening. So I obtained copies, obtained copies. I stress the word obtained.
You don't have to, but okay.
You know, that's a hint, hint, and wink, wink. So all the listeners and all the viewers out there.
I think Stevie Wonder would have picked up on that one.
You know, when I say that. So
maybe the wrong person for that, but whatever.
Oh no, Stevie's a musical genius.
I'm not saying that. No, I'm just saying, you know.
I know.
Yeah.
Jokes about Stevie Wonder.
I know it was no joke,
That's
but
that's what comes to mind. What I was gonna say is having I made a point of catching up on what happened to the Ultimate Peter Parker in the lead up to Miles. So I distinctly remember the awfulness of that whole ultimatum business, and this issue kind of brought that rushing back to me.
So the funny part about that part, before you go any further, was that something that I have a glancing memory of that happened to him then did not happen the way I thought it did.
Okay.
Which means that I need to probably, thankfully I did the research and figured out what actually happened, because I was like, I thought this one thing happened and whatever the case may be, but turned out it wasn't necessarily the case, and then this other thing happened to where that was the case before something happened before what actually happened, that Miles came in, that I thought happened at a different time, and then something happened after that, which I was like, really? I don't, whatever. Okay, sure.
Okay.
So like I said, without going fully into that, and it also made me go back, and because the only part about the Ultimate Universe in general that I've read was like the first couple of the first actual Ultimates book.
Gotcha.
Like that first 6-issue run, I think I may have started reading Ultimates 2 and didn't really get that far in it. There's a lot of shit that happened in that universe.
Well, yeah, without going too far into it, they definitely accelerated a lot of stories, and I believe that they rushed into a lot of stuff. They didn't give it a chance to breathe, but at the same time, you figure they ultimately, no pun intended, they ultimately knew that their sales numbers weren't where they needed to be to really keep a lot of those titles going. So they rushed into a lot of the quote unquote updates to these characters. Really, they only because the reason why I say that is because I lived through seeing a lot of those books canceled and seeing them go away. Really, the only and seeing the onset of the volume idea, like going by volumes,
right? Even on the wiki, that was like they had a contingent on it, which it shouldn't have, but
specifically speaking of the Ultimates. Speaking of, that it wasn't a monthly ongoing. It was solicited as a limited series followed by another limited series. So it was very, in that sense, it was very, again, with no pun intended, limited. So they had a limited amount of space to tell their story. They didn't exactly plan on it being a monthly, a month-to-month type of thing. And given that there were a lot of delays with a lot of those books as well, I think they just had to deal with a lot of those limitations.
Right. And even with the Ultimate Spider-Man, which had like 2 volumes, they still kind of, in one place, still counts it as 1 volume, even though it's actually 2 extra comics. They restarted it.
Right.
Again. But then they did the thing to where they went back and renumbered to keep it long, which is basically gets us back to this also, because this is technically also where the renumbering comes into play. And then they did another renumbering when Miles actually got the book himself.
Right.
But obviously that was a good reason for that, because it was a different character. So to the first couple of volumes, which was kind of sort of set up as looks like 1, but it's actually 2 different volumes, was that Universe's Peter Parker. And then Miles got his book. That all being said, like I said, I at some point, and every now and then I've said this, I'm gonna have to go back and read some Ultimates, and I, because some of that stuff's kind of crazy. But in relation to where it goes into Miles, we were under the impression that going into this issue that there was going to be a big tie into Miles and his relationship with the Ultimate Universe. There kind of is, but there isn't. So It's Miles' birthday. To short and quick of it, and then his family's trying to do some things for him, and just like Peter, he kind of has that thing where it's like, well, especially right, Peter shows up in his book, gives him a mission, but Peter apparently did not know that he was kind of he took a hiatus because of what happened to him the last couple of issues. But Peter just kind of came, knocked over some stuff, gave him a mission, and then bounced and gave him a card that he found at a bodega. But that's a whole nother thing. I don't know how big they get cards first, but you would think he could have done better than that. Hey, I don't know how bodegas work.
Hey, this is so Peter Parker. It's like,
I mean, that was
I gotta find
that was kind of the way from that.
it's a little hard for him to go into the local Walgreens or Dwayne Reed.
Which is kind of funny. I'm glad you said that, because going back to Amazing, that Dwayne Reed was brought up for the phrase for a reason. Yeah. But anyway,
what I was gonna say is, with regards to what the ultimate, no pun intended, reveal is in this book. It's interesting that some of what happened in Secret Wars is being kind of undone.
Right, because or is it?
Well,
because,
in his memories.
Well, thank you. That's what I was going to get to, because
It's not the actual being
right. We know
undoing, but
right. We know he has a fairly functional knowledge of what happened in Secret Wars. He's alluded to it on a couple of different times. It's before that is where his
that's my point. It's the memories of the happenings of the Ultimate Universe, that it was all of our understandings that had basically been pushed away, but in this issue seemingly are coming back to the surface.
Right. Part of me assumed that he actually did know about it, but for some strange reason kind of kept it under, I mean, obviously that would be hard. If he actually knew about it, that would have been kind of a hard thing to just kind of brush out to the side.
Right. Especially given the fact that he has both parents intact. And
right.
That is a big part of his story.
Right. But there was something that led me to believe that, well, he kind of knew about all of that, but that I think that this is kind of making the case that it may or may not have been the case. And we also get to find out why he has Rio's last name and not JD's. What we don't get to find out is why JD's got a stupid name, except for the fact that Bendis. Enough said. Oh, and I think going back to another point about the Ultimates comics in itself, I want to say, I'm not going to say that that's what's undone it, because he obviously Bendis was not doing everything for that line, even though that was his baby. I feel like some of that was probably done in by him, by stuff that he's done, because I do remember him saying, like, hey, if we had to do XYZ, like a crossover between 616 and that, then it's over with. And he ended up doing that with another thing that gets brought up in this book. Because if you did not know, there was, well, at this point, two, not counting Spider-Verse and stuff like that, there are two team-ups with Miles, miniseries with Miles and Peter, called Spider-Men.
Right.
I'm pretty sure both of them were done by Bendis.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And and I think one of the endings, and I still have yet to read either one, but basically one of the things that came out of this book was like, well, since Miles came from another book, another universe, surely there was a Miles Morales in this particular 616.
Right, there's a counterpart.
Yes. And that person apparently came back up in Spider-Man 2. I don't know, but I'm reading on that.
Yes.
And found that out. And he shows up in this book.
Yes, that is where this character has been sourced from. And I don't know if we've discussed this too much. I know I've read a little bit about it. Miles's Rogues Gallery is still being built, right, in this universe at least. And it's interesting.
Right. He's still using kind of some of Peter's old, or some of Peter's galleries, the Rogues Gallery in a sense.
Right. And it's interesting that they are building up Miles's Rogues Gallery with some characters from the Ultimate Universe. And it's funny that this comes into play in this issue. The counterpart, the Miles Morales counterpart that's in this issue, and I'm going to ring the spoiler bell because this is where the tease comes in. Right, so we've been teased up until this point that the Ultimate Universe was going to have a large impact on Miles's story going forward, and elements of it at least. Although I think it was teased that the entire Ultimate Universe was going to be
That's what kind of alluded to, right?
Was going to be kind of made a part of his story, again, and that may still be the case. That may still be the case, given what we find out in this issue, in that the Miles Morales of the 616 seems to have appropriated several items from the Ultimate Universe.
Right. And when I saw some of this before the reveal, it was like, wait, why are these characters even here? Like one of them you could almost see, but this other one, as I recall, as I don't remember, didn't really have much to do with, like, it was definitely a part of the Ultimates, or at least the original character was definitely a part of the Ultimates, but I don't think it had much to do with Miles, like, ever. So it was kind of weird to see until the reveal, see that person show up, and then to have a couple other items that
right. The only clue was subtle art features.
Right.
That was the only clue. Yeah, you didn't zoom in. I mean, we're lucky to be able to zoom in, but but if you didn't focus on a particular feature that was a clue, then you definitely fell for the bait and switch.
Or if you did not have it's been like good 10 years or whatever, it's actually probably more than that. But regardless, there's been some number of years, and you did not have a working knowledge of the original character's features.
Mm-hmm.
Because even then, like, you could have put almost anybody, minus skin tone or whatever, and been like, oh yeah, this is that person. You know. Personally, because like it's been a while and I don't remember what that person even looked like, and I didn't know what this person looked like because I hadn't read the 2 stories he came out of. So there was that. So yeah, we don't know whatever the implications going forward is going to end up be. We do see where Miles is apparently having flashes of his old life.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever that's going to come into play, we don't necessarily know. But for an anniversary issue that's could be starting up something potentially big. The only other thing it kind of says, because something we kind of already know is, like, there was rumors that where they wanted to start up the Ultimate Universe again. And I guess this could go a little bit of a ways in doing that, even though we know we have an idea that the universe didn't get outright killed off in Secret Wars, because we have seen characters from that universe kind of come in at different times. So we knew that at least there were some people. And as a matter of fact, in the last volume of Ultimates, the Ultimates team, the original Ultimates team, or parts of the original Ultimate teams, kind of showed up. So we knew there was, some parts of it was still around.
Right.
And with this, that could still be the case, of whether there maybe could be doing that. We don't know if that's going to be a thing that's going to happen. More importantly, why that would happen at this point. But we'll see if that turns out to be something. And I think we have spent a lot of time on that one too.
Well, just as a quick aside, there is a review of the very brief origin of Starling at the end of this issue.
Oh, right. Yes.
And the only thing I had to say of note, the only thing I noted was that it's weird hearing the Vulture's voice, Adrian Toombs' voice, so soon in this, his voice saying the things that he says in this story so soon after the the version of the Vulture that we saw in the Hunt storyline in Amazing.
Sure.
You know how he kind of sacrifices the Gibbon for for his own sake.
You know what?
You know, and leading.
Right. To be honest, I forgot about all of it and just defaulted to Michael Keaton in Homecoming.
I see.
Because that is pretty much a direct tie. I mean, a direct link here to that. Which,
Right.
You know, we do know the books have been taking cues from the MCU.
Right.
So that's, you know, it is what it is on that one.
Right. Only because my reference was from the most recent comic iteration. So
Which would make sense, but yeah, like I gloss over that part.
So it was weird. It was weird. Like I said, it was just weird to hear. I'm just like, wait a second, that's not the Vulture I remember just reading.
Right. So like he's talking totally, but yeah, I mean, you would think that hey, when he's in business mode, he would be talking different than he would be talking.
Right.
You know.
Poor Gibbon.
Yeah. Well, we're crying over spilt Gibbon. But yeah, so the B story was what it was. So we knew, I guess we were bound to get something on that at some point. It was just kind of weird to see in this issue, but maybe there's going to be a tying of the two things or something.
Right. I mean, in a real sense, they treated this like an anniversary issue. So it was a solid backup for a book where they had some points of consequence happening. So.
Mm-hmm. So. But yeah, so that was Miles Morales. Real quick, Black Hat number 4.
I didn't even realize that they had charged $4.99 for this book.
Well, it's kind of easy to do when you're using a review copy and not, store copy.
Yeah.
But Black Hat number 4, real quickly.
Oh, you read this?
I did. Mm-hmm.
So have you been reading this?
Yes, I have. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a fun. I think, like you said in your notes, like it's just fun to have a nice little heist.
Right, that's what I've been stressing. Right, I have been stressing this ever since the start of this book, and the proprietor of my LCS, was kind of confused as to why I was into this. I jokingly said, and it's part of the truth, that I'm down for the J. Scott Campbell covers, but that's part of it because I enjoy the fact that this book is there to kind of give us a fun heist story on a monthly basis.
Yeah, well, that's going to go to a whole thing about retailers and and.
Well, no, this particular, yeah, exactly. What I was going to say is, though, that this particular retailer is very much a Spider-Man fan and wants to see characters done, characters in the Spider-Man universe done well. And I guess maybe this wasn't up his alley, but I happen to like, as a fan of, heist movies, I happen to like the idea that we were going to get a heist comic book.
Well, yeah, but that kind of throws back to actually, I think there might have been a letters page in it was a letter in Miles's issue. Might I think about it from someone that basically said that where they were, there weren't any Miles books until she asked for them, basically, the retailer was kind of not necessarily not selling them to him, but basically was alluded to the fact, as we have heard from people on this show, it's like, well, those don't sell well because of XYZ type situation.
Right.
That's a kind of BS, and that will start me in a big rant that I was going to say earlier that I'm not going to do right now. But
I think I hate to say this. I think unfortunately, we do know why certain things sell in certain locales and certain things don't. So that is, I would, without getting too far into it, I would use some of the best-selling books like Saga don't sell in certain parts of the country. So
yeah, but that's again, yeah, like I said, like you said, but at the same time, it's like, okay, but you have retailers basically saying, well, that book's no good because it's not selling, and using, well, it doesn't sell well in this book, in this store because XYZ or some stupid odd reason because low sales. It's not low sales. It's like, well, if you're the retailer, at some point you would think you would want to be like, if someone's interested in the book, you would not go out of your way. And I'm not saying that people do this purposely or at all, but you would go out of your way to not sell somebody coming in looking for a particular thing. I would like to believe you'd want to have them be able to get, if you are actually indeed in the business of selling. And then, yes, I know at some point, well, it's like, it's a little kind of it's not as cost effective to order, say, one book for this one particular person that's coming in, whereas other people may or may not generally, but at the same time, it's like, serve the people you're trying to serve by not trying to do a disservice to them at some point. And I'm not saying all retailers are doing this or a number of them do this, but it kind of feels like it's, well, hey, we got the big books here, so hey, we'll push you into those, as opposed to like, comics.
I think I think the comics industry unfortunately still caters far too much to the people that know about previews. So people who know what they want. People who know what they want, and it's unfortunate in that sense. Selling retail comics, and this is a whole story. This is a whole episode on the pitfalls of retail in comics, because unfortunately there is a no return policy, and back stock is back stock, and it takes up space, and it costs money to store. And
I like all of that.
Right. No, I understand, like, I don't want to get into it. That's the thing. But like, I understand some of the economic stuff behind, behind there. And that's unfortunately what they use as cover for the things that Roddy Cat is, that you're kind of railing against. And that is unfortunate, that, and it sucks. That several comics don't get the exposure. That's really what it is. They don't get the exposure that they need. And unfortunately, the higher ups use that as a reason to cancel the books,
or even some of the lower downs. That's a whole other story. But anyway, like I said, not to belabor that too much. It's just that is a problem in the industry that I wish wasn't one, and definitely one that wasn't being used as one also.
But it's specifically about this book. The fact that it's a heist story, maybe that the initial setup was kind of on the silly side with the goons. I find the goons endearing.
I like the goons. Yeah, the whole setup to me was like, okay, I'm down with this.
I find that whole dynamic of people who are knowingly ne'er-do-wells, but not the worst type of ne'er-do-wells. These are folks who aren't looking to physically hurt people. There's a little bit of Robin Hood in here, a little bit.
We have seen particular archetypes of the goons in movies before. Like usually they're like kind of like the joke characters on the side of certain movies.
Right.
This kind of plays on that also, which is kind of fun in itself.
Right. So, I mean, ultimately, before we move on, I wanted to just say that this book remains fun. It's on my pull list physically, and it's just a fun read. I enjoy reading it because it's like it's more along the lines of what hijinks will this group of thieves get into now?
And they do. They have, now I don't know how long it would be sustainable, but definitely for the last few issues that they have been getting into some hijinks, and according to this issue, is leading up to something big.
Right, and I think that's the driving force of the story, is that there is something big that is in the works, but they also have a little bit of Marvel continuity to play with, that they established in Amazing, that had been previously established in X-Men way back with the Thieves, and I've said this before, with the New Orleans Thieves Guild, and that was just a natural progression. Talk about a natural progression into creating local thieves guilds all around the country, and and how that would play with really the only thief character of note in the MCU up until the whole Thieves Guild in New Orleans with Gambit in them.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, can you think of another thief type that really had that amount of exposure? The Black Cat has been around for ages, so
Yeah, Black Cat would pretty much be the main other one outside of Gambit.
right. So
that we know of, that like big time.
Well, exactly, that has received that kind of exposure since their inception. I remember Gambit being a big deal in the X books, but in terms of just thievery in general, thievery in Marvel Universe.
Right. I mean, Black Fox, who shows up, who has been a part of this book, would be another one on a very lower level because he's a spider, a spider villain. But that's that's that.
Right.
But he shows up in his book also, so that's so yeah. So just the quick and dirty on it. Felicia needs something from the Fantastic Four's house, and she doesn't sneak in. She just walks up and got a date with Johnny, which that makes total sense. And as she even says, I don't even have to go do any of that stuff. I just walk in, do the easiest way, even get Johnny Storm's attention, which is very easy to do apparently. And his connection to Spider-Man doesn't hurt either.
I was just going to say, she's not exactly she actually has lost the benefit of having a secret identity as well, so
right.
She uses that to her advantage in this case, although it doesn't help that there are superhero paparazzi running around, which leads to the events of this issue.
Right. And Johnny Storm's both ignorance and horniness is at play here. But regardless of all that, where Felicia goes, there's hijinks ensues, which in the corner of, in a kind of a catch me if you can type of thing, you have the person that's been kind of hunting them down before the Thieves Guild. That's kind of back in play, and that he shows up, but where in the last couple of issues there's been wrinkles in what they're trying to do. This is no exception, because I don't want to say that this is a deep cut, but it's a deep enough cut to where somebody comes into play that is an old Fantasy IV villain. That's like, didn't expect to see this person.
That was a weird twist.
Right.
At the end of the issue, I thought it was, but like I said, getting back to the hijinks, what kind of hijinks are they going to get into now?
You knew, especially with the dealings coming from, the last issue and Doctor Strange's house, you knew it was going to be something.
Of course.
That seems to be the underlying theme of clearly there's something was going to happen. And sure enough, it did, or it's starting to. That's going to play out in the next issue. And it's like, okay, I did not expect that person, but all right. Yeah, that's the thing. But yeah, like I said, Black Cat's continue to be fun. Hopefully, continues to be for the duration of its run. And check it out; it's fun. It's we could use a couple of good fun books out there. And with that, I guess unless you got something else you want to,
no, we'll go into rapid fire. We got a lot of books to talk about.
Yeah, we do. Hit it. Guess we should go ahead and do Dirt's out of the way.
Yeah, I've got a couple in common with Dirt, so let me take those. So Batman number 78. I'm inclined to agree with Dirt's general thoughts on this. I'm not a fan of this. He actually hates this, but he's a Batman collector and is willing to maintain his collection, knowing that King is leaving the book. I am in a very similar boat. I don't necessarily read Batman that loyally. I think that's probably the best way to put it. But I try to keep up with what's happening. It's probably the best way to keep track of what's happening in that corner of the DC universe. So this issue is so Batman and Catwoman centric, and it's so slowly paced, and it's so kind of navel gazing, like, oh, this is how I feel, and this is what I'm going through. And I sort of remember Nightfall being like this, but obviously with different characters. I think it's funny that that Dirt brought up something that was right on the edge of my consciousness, and I didn't realize it. But he asked why was Batman disguising himself as Tom Selleck in Magnum PI, and I kind of laughed at that, thinking that's what I was thinking when I saw that.
So this sounds like I would like this issue.
It's not fun. It's zero fun. You probably won't like this issue.
I mean, I'm not up on it. Like I said, the last time I read Batman was when he and Superman and them went on a double date. That was the last time I actually read the book.
Right. I think it's too slowly paced. I think it's just a lot of navel gazing.
And I enjoyed that, but it looks
Right. That's more fun. That's the thing.
Right.
This is not fun. Event Leviathan number 4. There's not that much happening. A lot of stuff is happening in the background. It's different in that there is a little bit of movement in the story. We find out that Superman's intervention in the last issue did not go as planned, and he has been added as an asset to the team of detectives. And Lois basically goes off and reveals that she is working several angles to this story, and that is not an understatement. Let's see here. So those are the 2 DC books we had in common. Let me run through.
I would also go so far as to say that Dirt is a particular kind of reader.
Oh yes.
That kind of plays into what he likes and what is with everybody, but
Sure. So let me finish off his books, and then we'll get into some of the comics that we have in common this week. Detective Comics number 1011, which still sounds so weird. I agreed with I skimmed this book, and I agreed that the art in this book is a little rough, and it actually turned me off to the story. He actually liked the story, and there's nothing fancy in this arc, and there is some follow-up on the Mr. Freeze stuff that is kind of happening as a B plot in the story that is going to emerge as an A plot probably over the next several issues. So that's what's going on in Detective. Berserker Unbound. This is, I believe, a Dark Horse book by Mike Deodato, and PCN_Dirt is not a fan. This is not very enticing to him. It is a tale of it's very much like the Conan in the Marvel books nowadays. It's a barbarian in modern times, and Dirt is not very enthusiastic about this book. Moon Knight Annual number 1. This is the latest in the Acts of Evil stories in the Marvel annuals, and apparently Kang is back. Time is warped, and that's going to happen when Kang is around. The story is too short and wraps up too neatly, but it's actually not bad. For what it is, it's fine. I am correcting a spelling error. And the Moon Knights throughout history are a fun way to acknowledge the changes from the Old West version of the character. So that's interesting. Might be worth
he doesn't mean fun. We don't know. It doesn't matter.
It could be. It could be fine, or it could be fun.
Yeah. But I was gonna say about those particular acts of evil. I think you could pretty much lay a similar claim to most of them. Like they've been kind of quick and cleanly wrapped up for the most part.
I've only read a few of them. I only read. I remember the Ms. Marvel one. So
yeah. Like I think there's only at this point there's been like 4, and all of them are kind of just like, oh yeah, well, there you go.
Right, but they also benefit from added page added page numbers because of the annual format. So what may feel like a quick resolution is just the benefit of having a few extra pages of story. Riddler, Year of the Villain number 1. The Riddler sucks, and he knows it, and Batman knows it, and even Lex Luthor knows it. So what does the Riddler need to do? Retire? The story is meandering, and the art is only half there, and it feels like A much loved Neil Gaiman story from Secret Origins, but not as good. That's not fun when it's a rehash. And lastly, Dirt Red, Gotham City Monsters #1. And he writes that he wasn't sure what to expect from this, but he wasn't expecting it to be terribly boring and pointless. But the artwork was nice, and it's not a complete loss because of it. So he is not going to read issue #2 of Gotham City Monsters. When I saw this on the solicits, I was just like, Stone Cold.
What?
Like, why is there a book called Gotham City Monsters?
What?
Because Marvel did a thing called
Monsters, right?
Unleashed.
I mean, but they had an entire event around that, so
Well,
they at least had a bigger rollout.
and probably with just as much steam behind it.
Well, they had
Meaning none.
no. I was about to say they definitely had more steam than Gotham City Monsters.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think whatever.
They definitely had more steam than Gotham.
I mean, they definitely pushed it more, yes,
So,
but it doesn't mean that it didn't fall. It doesn't seem to be falling flat, or it fell flat when it landed.
right. Well, it was a tough. I was about to say it was a tough concept.
Yeah.
So back to the rest of my books. Shout out anything that you had in common. Captain Marvel #10. The identity of the star character is revealed, and it is who I thought it was.
Is it who I thought it was?
Who did you think it was?
Basically a clone of Carol or something like that.
No, it was.
I can't remember what I said about that, or a time version of.
No, it was who I thought it was, but it had somewhat unique take on how this character became empowered. So that is the interesting part of this character's.
I would say spoil it, but I might actually read it.
No, it's worth reading. It's worth reading because it's. But if you've been on board this volume of Captain Marvel #10, it's not predictable, but you when you read it, you'll see. The Daredevil #11. So Daredevil has been going through a very long and elongated version of the television Daredevil, in that Matt Murdock is not sure he should be Daredevil anymore. But this is nothing new for the character. There is a guest character who is taking up a lot of time in the book, and that is Detective Cole North, who is anti-cape, anti-superhero. In this issue, he bites off way more than he can chew by trying to take on the wall crawler, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, who gives him the what for. Definitely, may have an effect on the way Detective North proceeds in the near future. Matt Murdock, much like Bruce Wayne, is still on the long road back to becoming a hero. We did Doctor Strange, talked about Event Leviathan. Invaders #9. I'm not going to spoil this. I know Roddy Cat said he's going to try to catch up. Talk about Steve and Bucky going deep undercover. That's all I'm going to say about this issue. That is the cliffhanger. Invisible Woman #3. So this actually played out pretty well. There was a nice twist on the Invisible Woman's powers in the story. And I actually like the fact that I didn't necessarily see the twist at the end coming.
It felt like I did.
It was a little predictable when I thought about it,
Mm.
but I kind of like that I didn't necessarily see it coming until it came. So I like that at least my suspension of disbelief had lasted that long.
Yeah, no, I think from the first issue when kind of got brought up, and then I was like, oh, he's missing, and I was like, okay, well, we see that's going to come up in a certain way, and sure enough, it did. So.
Right, and it is also a spy story, so that's where this particular twist is seen more often than not.
Yeah, and kind of like seeing Sue is although her overconfidence kind of got in her way on a couple of times in issues past, and even in this one.
Say again?
Her overconfidence kind of got in the way a little bit. Yeah, because she's like, well, she's used to dealing with, bigger bads, but then just like somebody got the drop on her in this issue because she was kind of confident in her dealings, or almost a couple of times, but at least one time was like, okay, yeah, whatever. But
right,
she got the drop on her. It's just like, well,
well, it's a lot of fun in that you take someone out of that team dynamic that they are almost exclusively in, and that's what these solo books are. These solo, one-offs are for a lot of these these characters in big team books.
Right, but at the same time, it's like, hey, it's kind of one of those things. I don't know if she actually thinks this way, but it's like, hey, I've taken on Galactus, and like just two spies are kind of like shouldn't be as big of a problem.
Right, but what's funny about that is that these spies have Marvel universe type level technology.
Right, but she doesn't. She
Right,
it's
that part. Right, it's that part that she underestimates.
Mm-hmm.
She underestimates their access to such things. So, as you said, yeah, she probably underestimates everyone that she's going up against because of the fact that she's generally acknowledged to be, and it's even something that comes up in Black Cat. She's generally acknowledged to be the most powerful and the most dangerous member of the Fantastic Four. So that that it was actually a pretty, like I said, it was a pretty fun read, and I was glad that my suspension of disbelief lasted through the end of this issue. And lastly, Silver Surfer Black #4. This was it was weird to see Norrin Rad of all characters being put to this particular test. It's the it's the age-old time travel test of what to do about
most recently seen in the MCU with one James Rhodes.
Right. It's what to do with your chance to change the future. And we don't have Norrin Rad, the Silver Surfer, coming to the conclusion that this won't change anything, but we do have the intervention of one Watcher, and what happens when you see the Watcher. Some stuff's gonna, he's
what we used to see when the Watcher comes about.
Well, this is in the past, after all.
I know, but that's why I made that point, because this is set in the past, and we don't have the Watcher per se.
Yeah, not the version of the Watcher.
Right. Which brings up that, speaking of, because I don't recall them saying that this was in the past, or alluding to the fact that this was past up until this issue.
No, this was
unless they missed it, because I read the the first page where they do the rundown of what happened up until now, and I noticed they put it there, but I don't remember, and I need to go back to previous issues to see if they may have put it there, but I don't remember seeing if they actually did do that.
It came, if I'm not mistaken, it came up not in the first issue, but in the second issue. In terms of when and where and who he was dealing with, because of the whole Null thing.
Right.
And I think they established around that point, when they introduced Null into this book, that this was in the past, like firmly rooted in the past.
But and on that, I had taken the assumption that Null was still around, because being that I think he wasn't. He's current stuff.
Exact. No, what I was going to say is the Null in the state that he's in this miniseries is firmly rooted in the past, because in the present, Null. I'm not up on what's happening in Absolute Carnage, but from what I understand, Null was being imprisoned by the symbiotes as being the body, as being the essence of the planet Clintar. And this is Null pre being imprisoned. So maybe that's the
I didn't pick up on that one.
Right, maybe that's why I read into that. But if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure they definitely root the Silver Surfer story into the deep past.
Oh no,
and it's obviously it's even reinforced over the last several issues. So actually it's only 4. So
right, I was about to say that can't be the case too because of
it's just it's really been 2 and 3. I don't believe they've mentioned too much of it in the first issue.
Right. Well, like I said, that's why I said I need to go back and look because I don't remember them even alluding to as much up until. Well, the point wasn't driven home until this issue. I'll put it that way.
Got it.
Anyway, and
that's that.
Okay. That being the case, I will get to. I think I only got like a couple. Let's see. Guardians of the Galaxy Prodigal Son #1. And I think this is the last issue of this little, because I know they've been doing these things like in threes, but so the Guardians get called in because of there was a death. So going back to a point, like there is a weird Thor Loki thing going on in this issue, and you may see why by me saying that. So Prodigal, whatever his name is, was off doing his thing. He wanted to get back home to kill his brother named Luke, Luuk, who's dressed in green, by the way. I'm just gonna say that. And this brother killed his dad. But apparently it was for a good reason, as we found out in this issue. But the Guardians are kind of here because they were already there because Star-Lord knows of the family because his dad's royalty and so are they, so they knew each other from the time. A fight happens. Apparently, I did not see the how this thing ended, because you would think, like, if there was a Thor kind of Loki situation, you would think that the quote unquote bad guy would be Loki and he would take an L. That did not happen in this issue. In fact, a slight reversal of, like, basically, what if Loki took over the crown and people was okay with it? For the reasons why.
Right, exactly, because Odin deserved it.
Basically, yes, actually.
Yeah, that's essentially the twist.
Right. So that plays out in the different day. So, in Prodigal's terms and in Agent _7, he got real petty and dealt with the situation his way. And Guardians didn't do anything to stop it, and that's pretty much where this book ends.
Right. It's kind of, and I skimmed this trying to figure out, what on earth we're reading here. And, it's an interesting but kind of underwhelming introduction to a new character that I guess we're supposed to not completely like.
Right. And I don't know if this character's probably, I mean, sure, they're setting it up to where this character's probably going to show up at some point down the line, but I don't. Right. Like, yeah, they did a lot of setup for this character. It doesn't seem like this is probably going to be around that much longer.
It's interesting to see if there's going to be a redemption arc or not for this character.
Right. But yeah, I would imagine maybe playing out in Guardians or something. Who knows? Or because that's the only place at this point where that character could show
not
up.
Necessarily, because there is supposed to be a cosmic level.
Yes, we'll get to that
in the news. But been teased, so
and I'm sure that person probably will show up there, but I don't know if it's as a factor of what, we don't know.
Right, we shall see.
But anyway, so that was that one. That was an amusing read for that reason. Ironheart #10, I believe is my. Oh no, it's not my last book. Ironheart #10. So, Shuri, Riri, and Silhouette from the New Warriors are basically still in Wakanda, and they're going to this wellspring of all things, which is a thing that I had to look up because I should have looked up before because this has come up in this book before, and apparently this is something that was kind of slightly rooted in both New Warriors and Thunderbolts to a certain extent. So this kind of goes back that far, which would be reasonable since Midnight Fire is involved in this, and therein his sister Silhouette, who has also become involved with it. So they're all three in Wakanda. They go off to find this thing and find Midnight Fire. They do, and the other big takeaway is, well, the couple of takeaways is like, one, they have this moment where they're kind of taking daddy notes. They're comparing daddy notes, and it kind of reemphasizes the fact that Riri, Riri's stepdad has died, and supposedly her biological dad has died. But apparently, that might not be the case given what happens at the end of this issue. And that is all I will say about that. But it was a pretty good. Oh, Riri and Shuri also has been shipped apparently because they've been given a name of Shiriri.
Okay.
And I don't know. I assume we will find out because Eve Young is pretty good about after a book to ship before the next issue comes about, talking about what happened, some of her process of the last book. And she did that recently with issue 9. So, like I said, I'm sure when issue 11 comes, we'll see if some of that gets brought up. Anyway, that is that. It was cool. And my last book is Swordmaster number 3. And I'm believing, you and I both said we were kind of looking for a translation, or I guess a original translation of this, and like
the original version, because
right,
it's more of an adaptation.
Right, and I suspect that this is the adaptation we are going. Well, what we were looking for is a translated version of the original, like you said, version of this. And I'm thinking this is probably, if that letters page is to be believed, this is it. I mean, outside of like what they've already done, I don't think we've seen, and we have still not seen anybody, take the original Chinese verse. Or we may have, and we just hadn't found it yet. But we haven't seen anybody just literally take the transversion of the Chinese version and do it. I think this is
straight translation, right?
Right. So this seems like this might be it, or at least as it's been alluded to. That this could be it, and that might be my interpretation of it. And anything else. That being said, though, there's really not much happens. I mean, and there's a lot of talking about the sword. Like in the first part of the main story is like this mysterious woman comes, beats up this monster, uses the sword better than Lynn does, and then shoves it in him, and he gets a whole bunch of history, or starts to get a whole bunch of history. And then the backstory is he and Shang-Chi fighting Ares for that same sword.
Well, it's not the backstory; it's the B story.
Well, same difference.
Well, no, when you say backstory, it's it's almost like the backstory of the character. So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so like the backup story, maybe.
Right.
I think that's what you meant to say.
I did.
The backup story. Yeah, the backup story has Shang-Chi in it.
You are absolutely right. So, and that is them going up against Ares because he took the sword at some point, thinking to use it for himself, but his plan seems to be fairly clear to everybody else except for the person he takes it to. But they get the sword back, and apparently they're going to ally themselves with Ares, what it seems like, for some odd reason. And there's some history also in that about the sword.
Right. I think I would just add, I skimmed this. I wanted to read it again because I felt like I missed, I think I was just in a hurry or something, just flipping through this. The pacing on this book is a little tough. I think the Wave, the Arrow book, because Wave has the backup story in that book, but the Arrow book I think is paced much better. It reads a lot. There's a lot more to her stories, I think, than this book. And I'm finding it a lot easier to follow. Maybe it's a byproduct of the art as well. There's a lot more monster stuff in this as opposed to Arrow, which is lots of cityscape. So those are the main differences I'm having with these two books so far.
Sure, I get it. But anyway, it is what it is on that one. But and I don't know, some of that pacing might be coming out of translation, but I kind of doubt it.
No, I think it's because of the way the layout, because of the way the story's laid out. I think it's just the way the original story was paced out.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
So
that's what I meant. But,
actually, it's like we're supposed to be dwelling on the art, and when you're not so enthusiastic about the art, you're kind of not dwelling on it so much.
I mean, it was all right, but anyway, that's that.
I'm getting used to like the renditions of the monsters. So
that's that, and I don't know. who knows where that's going to go.
Yeah.
Click of the week.
Clicks of the week.
We already got 2. And hey, this one, there might be a surprise, folks, because we have Tim's, which was Young Justice number 8.
Wow!
I'm not going to sit here and say that I know Tim that well to say I could have predicted this. But I also do know he likes Young Justice.
And I think it's a byproduct of the fact that this was a down week for Powers of 10.
I'm not going to say that because, like I said, yes, it was. I'm like, if you put this week's up with last week's House of X, yeah, it wouldn't come out that great. But I don't think it was bad. And I know you're not saying it was bad, but
right, it was just a down week, right? It wasn't bad. It just wasn't. It was earth shattering because
I kind of dug what it was, though. I'll put it that way.
It was more setup than anything. So we'll see how that plays.
I mean, it's all been set up, though. That's the thing.
No, but this is set up for the next several issues, not for like the future of the X universe. That's what I think the X universe setup is what this is all about, the Powers of 10 and the House of X. But in terms of where we're going to go with the next several issues, the setup for Sinister's role is heavily seated in this issue.
Right, which we already saw some of. Some is like it's basically a get from here to there type situation at this point. But yeah, but like I said, Young Justice, that's Tim's pick. And for Dirt, this is probably not a surprise either. Detective Comics 1011.
Right. So let's see. What am I going to pick this week?
I enjoyed Young Justice. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I actually seriously consider Black Cat number 4 potential click of the week just because it was fun.
Sure.
Let's see. I have King Thor number 1 as a potential click of the week for myself. I think I'm going to go with. King Thor number 1 for the intestine stretchingness.
Sure. That works.
I like this issue of Miles. It's a nice kind of anniversary that wasn't billed as one. I like and I liked what happened in Amazing as well, but it felt like we were back in the 80s but updated. So
I'm not gonna lie, I generally have been enjoying Miles 1 and Saladin Ahmed's work in general. And maybe I built it up too much in my head, but I felt a little bit let down on what we got.
About what the reveal of the Ultimate Connection is?
Yeah, because I thought it was just going to be a slightly bigger thing than what it was.
See, here's the thing. I think it might be more.
I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that there's not more coming, but I figured it would just kind of just like hit a big point coming in. But that was just probably me.
Yeah, let's say I like the fact that it's a slow burn. Because it's not, we're back, but we actually have someone who it appears to be it appears that this someone is grabbing tech from all of the Ultimates and putting it to use.
Right, because which is a weird concept in itself. Because like, okay, this is a person that was from this universe that ended up in that universe, which is which we usually see, but now is back in this universe because whatever other reason we'll find out.
Right.
And dealing with somebody from, well, actually, no, never mind. Forget what I was about to say because he already had ties to that person in this universe anyway, which was kind of weird until I read that. But knowing the character and all that kind of stuff makes sense, I guess. And I still got some more reading to do because I guess I should catch up with those two, even though I really don't want to.
What's up?
I feel compelled to read those 2 Spider-Man crossovers or series. I know I don't have to, but
yeah,
I feel compelled in myself.
It's not necessarily required reading now that you know what the current Miles Morales is like.
Yeah, so, but if you,
what what the
you know me for years, so sometimes
what the 616 Miles Morales is like.
right. But also, if you know me, sometimes I just have to do some things for my own, scientific endeavor benefit, my own academic purposes.
Sure.
That being the case, I haven't said mine. You said King Thor. Actually, I'm going to go with Loki number 3.
No kidding.
Yeah, because like I said, I'm whatever was put in that book may not be as big as I'm making it out to be, but I do like what is suggested.
Okay.
And again, like I said, it feels like because of that suggestion that I could be reading into myself, it could read into something with King Thor.
Gotcha. Okay. Alrighty. So now that we've got our clicks out of the way, I'm going to read the first ad read, and we are going to try to move the show along by using our favorite hurry up ad read, which is help us keep our podcast free by shopping at Amazon. Visit cspn.us, then click the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. Purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, apparel, etc., etc. For every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends the CSPN a payment.
Okay.
That helps us keep the Comic Book Chronicles free for our listeners at no extra cost to you. Amazon.com through CSPN.us. Do it today.
As you can see from the video, I've been doing a little bit of trying to do some things with some scenes and whatever. But hey, we'll see how that works out. News, cinematic.
The news.
There we go. Let's say the thing went in transition. So cinematic news, as we tend to do every week, starts off with Spider-Man's Tom Holland reveals Robert Downey Jr.'s advice to him. And no, we're not talking about from Tony Stark to Spider-Man. We're talking about Robert Downey to Tom Holland. And apparently some of that advice was sometimes you don't need to ask for advice. You can just take a step back and watch the people you admire. And I can't believe it, but I find myself agreeing with that because that is something I have also believed in. So there you go.
All righty. Next up, Destin Daniel Cretton, the director of the upcoming MCU Shang-Chi movie, isn't interested in perpetuating any more racial stereotypes to the MCU, specifically about Asian characters or Asian actors from a variety of backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think there was another article that was kind of going off of this, saying that he definitely didn't want to make, say, the Mandarin character into any more of a racial stereotype as historically done. So that's promising. Next up, Todd McFarlane has choice words about the MCU Sony split. And I say, I don't know why I put this in here, but who cares?
What did he say? I don't even know.
Actually, you know what? I barely read this thing. What did he say? See, according to who knows the ins and outs of the Sony MCU split, it was the avoidance of another bidding war. You saw what happened with Spider-Man? He asked the crowd. They were trying to extract Spider-Man, right? And Sony went, no, it ain't gonna happen. You can read the article for yourself. We don't need to go into all of that. But he basically had some words about the split.
All right, as many people did.
Yeah.
Next up, apparently, it's been teased that the animated What If series on Disney Plus that's going to be on Disney Plus is going to feature an episode in which Black Panther becomes Star-Lord. So that's going to be funny when we see someone respond to Korath who asks, "Who?" So we shall see how that plays out. I mean, that is the nature of What If stories. So
yeah, that one in itself is a little farther than I expected. Because a lot of what ifs are like, hey, what if this happened instead of this? Or, you do have the occasional, what if Jane Foster was Thor? Hey, guess what? That actually happened. Or what if Cap becomes president, which also happened. Stuff like that. So this one was like a little further than
It's
than the usual one.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's what if the Ravagers came for Prince T'Challa instead?
Basically, right. I guess that's what it says in there. So so interesting. We'll see how that progresses. Haley Steinfeld, and I keep wanting to do the Steinfeld thing going, but ding. In talks, I don't even know if that's actually how she says her name. Anyway, she's in talks for Kate Bishop in the Hawkeye Disney Plus show. So,
okay,
sure, why not? She seems to look the part, and then you may know her from Bumblebee. You may know her from the remake of True Grit and other stuff she's done. I think she voiced Spider-Gwen and some of that stuff.
I believe so.
Yeah, she did actually Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I believe she was Gwen in Into the Spider-Verse, so she's no stranger to genre acting.
Right. So hey, there you go. Next.
Right. So in maybe not surprising news, Disney Plus has already canceled one of its Muppet shows, which is specifically the Muppets reboot, which would have followed directly up on, I believe the last movie was Muppets Take Manhattan, or I think the story was that was supposed to follow up on that. If I'm
was it? Oh, I thought it was from that
from the more recent
show.
movies.
No, the show that they had on ABC a few years back, which is kind of like The Office.
Possibly,
but
so,
I don't know.
I only read the story in passing, so
Sure.
There's still another Muppets. There's another Muppets related show on Disney Plus that's moving forward. So it's not, this is just some creative differences.
Right. Yeah. According to this, Muppets Live Another Day, which sounds like a Bond movie, weirdly enough, would take up after Muppets Take Manhattan.
Right. That's what I remember reading. Okay.
Right. So not what I was thinking of because I didn't read this. Well, wait. It says, Muppets Now is basically like that not the old Muppet show, but kind of in the vein of that last one. So anyway, cool. Mission Impossible cast Haley Atwell, and I jokingly said on Twitter, "It's like, okay, so this is how Tom Cruise is gonna cross over into the MCU with Agent Carter." But
he's already crossed over with Hawkeye.
I mean, that's also true, but nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, apparently that whole thing, I see, I kind of like those Mission Impossible movies. They're fun, kind of dumb. And you get to see Tom Cruise run his ass off for 10-20 minutes. I don't know.
I saw the most recent one, and it was just it was pretty funny.
I was gonna bring that up. I also watched it, but I didn't watch the whole thing yet. And I got like past the one scene from the trailer where Henry Cavill cocks his arms.
Oh yeah.
Which it was just kind of early in the movie, spoilers, but it was but I went like halfway through and for some reason I didn't finish.
The charged up punching.
Yes. But anyway, so yeah, look forward to that. That's cool. More Haley Atwell.
All
Next.
Right. Christian Bale has some peculiar advice for Robert Pattinson. What is it? Baby powder in the suit?
Don't have a meltdown where there's recorded equipment around. No, that's not it. That's me joking. Because he's famously had that meltdown on set and it got recorded. But that's not it. I don't know. It just basically says here, it was like when he was asked about Pattinson's casting as Batman, Bale replied, "Oh, good choice. He's interesting. I'm sure he'll come up with something real interesting," which kind of sounds sarcastic. And I don't know. I think Bale's British, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's even worse. Not saying British people are worse, but I'm just saying this just kind of comes off a certain way from him. But his advice was, it involves a challenge that comes with wearing the iconic bat suit. You weren't too far off, but it's be able to pee for yourself. He said humorously, "You don't feel much like a hero when you can't take a piss by yourself," which I guess denoting how hard those suits are to get in and out of, basically. Next up, Margot Robbie.
Find the next two. It looks like
I will do that. Yes. Developing Tank Girl film reboot in a report. And at the time of the report, the first report, we did not know. There wasn't much about it. And there's still not that much more about it, except for she's involved. And the fact that it now has a director, which is Miles Juris Parafit. I'm hoping I'm saying that name right. So Margot Robbie's producing it, and she's going to star in it. And I don't think they have nothing else except for the director and her involvement.
Did you see the original Tank Girl movie?
I feel like I have on cable at one point,
Okay.
but I don't really remember much about it with Lori Petty.
Right, I haven't. So
Yeah.
whether or not there's something worth rebooting or not is
I think I suspect this is not about it being rebootable or not, and more ends like, hey, this is tough punk girl,
property.
yeah, and I think Robbie's kind of like, hey, we're gonna empowering, I guess would be another word to say about it, but and I'm not taking it as a slight, but I'm just saying, I feel like that could be possibly why she took on the role. And plus, it is, I'm sure Tank Girl does definitely have a cult following, but I don't think it has anything. It may have less to do with how rebootable it is than that.
Right.
Anywho,
so in our next story, Wonder Girl becomes Deathstroke in Titan Season 2 behind the scenes, and not BTS, the K-pop band.
you're just going to be stuck on that, aren't you?
Because it's weird seeing it cap. That's the thing. Seeing it capitalized like that,
yeah,
makes you, throws you off, or at least throws me off. But
I can't believe that got brought up. Oh, geez.
What?
Oh, I'm looking at the story on the side. So Gears 5, the video game just came out, and if you know anything about the characters in that, they all look kind of meaty, wrestlerish looking.
Okay.
And Batista is actually going to be in it as a playable character.
Right.
But there's another character that people are saying looks like Goldberg.
Okay.
That has been with the series the whole time, and people are thinking that is actually Goldberg, and it's not.
Okay.
So that just struck me as weird. But anyway, Connors Leslie, who's playing Donna Troy, aka Wonder Girl, put on a Deathstroke mask in a behind the scenes thing.
Right. It was an image that she put out on social media, and I actually did not realize that Season 2 is already up and available or at least the first episode is up and available.
It certainly is, and I just started catching up on the first season.
Right. So I guess I'll be diving into that shortly. But it was pretty cool that that she put on the mask, even if it is just a teaser photo.
Yeah, she got abs. Also.
Yeah, definitely.
David Ramsey reveals title of his final episode as director. So yeah, David Ramsey, who plays John Diggle on Arrow, has been doing a couple of some directing here and there in the last few seasons. And he shares a behind-the-scenes photo on his Instagram of the title page of the script of the season's 6th episode, that being season 8, confirming himself as director, and the episode is titled Reset.
Okay.
And you can see the picture of it here, along with his copy. So cool. Going on him. I didn't know his middle name was Paul. So which means he's probably the one black person that I know has 3 first names. Weird. Anyway, next.
I was about to say you're gonna make me search the memory data banks for that one.
Hey, there might be another one, but he's the only one that of recent memory that I know of.
I gotcha. Jonathan Shake will reprise his role as Jonah Hex from DC's Legends of Tomorrow for CW's Arrowverse Crisis on Infinite Earths TV crossover, according to Entertainment Weekly.
And in other news, Agent 78 and I are both going to return for Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover because everybody else is.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever. I'm just joking, but it just seems like who haven't they gotten? I think I don't know if that whole Smallville thing is working out, but it sounds like they may have gotten one of them. I don't know. Hell, they're bringing in Burt Ward. I mean, come on.
Right.
Again, not a slight, but I'm just saying they're pulling from a lot of places.
Definitely.
Anyway, from the Flash side of things, Crisis on Infinite Earths takes hold in season 6 trailer. So there's a trailer for the Flash that teases the upcoming crossover. There you go. Boom. It says, and it also says it's no secret that the Flash will feel the effects of Crisis throughout season 6. And they go into some stuff that came out at Comic-Con. Which, if we know anything about that, like, I'm pretty sure it's not going to go the way that ended. Because if I'm not mistaken, that's where Barry died. Was it that one?
I don't know.
There's so many crises.
Oh, you mean in the main? In
the comics version. Yeah. So, but he's already kind of had a quote unquote. He didn't die, but they kind of did something like that before, and they already did Flashpoint like early on. So I mean, yeah,
right. He's back.
Which is a different thing.
He's back. All right. Next up, speaking of the CW, Black Lightning returns on the CW for its 3rd season, and first trailer has come out, which shows that new conflict is coming to Freeland.
Go Scooter. I haven't seen the trailer yet, and I'm not caught up on season 2. So, yeah. In fact, I'm not even caught up on season 1. I don't know how that happened because it's only 8 episodes. Weird. Next up, new Scoob. I don't know why I said it like that. New Scoob image reveals the first look of Fred and Velma. I know some people like myself love some Velma. Go figure. This is a slightly different. Well, it's not a different take, but she seems a little slimmer than the Velma I'm used to. I don't know actually why that's a thing, but apparently Gina Rodriguez is going to play Velma. And wait, Muttley's going to be in here? Really?
Okay.
This one is, so apparently, yeah, there's going to be a bunch of a few. That's right. This is the thing that Tracy Morgan's going to be in because he's playing Captain Caveman, and like Dynamite's going to be in it, and Blue Falcon, and Dynamite, and yeah, some things. Daphne Blake is being played by Amanda Seyfried. Okay. And of course, and Frank Welker, which is the weirdest thing I had ever found out about was Frank Welker playing Scooby. I don't know why it's weird, and apparently he's done a number of animal voice work. You know,
I mean, yeah, he is he's a big time voice actor. So.
I know, but what you think of him as the one thing or one or two things, and you know he's been around a long time and done a lot of stuff. But it's like, okay, boom. But then, yeah. Anyway, next up, it's just funny to me.
All right, author Walter Mosley revealed in an op-ed that he quit his job as a writer on Star Trek Discovery after being chastised by Human Resources for using the N-word on the job. Mosley, who is black, did not reveal. Actually, no.
He goes into it.
Yeah. Hold on.
The short of it is he was basically recounting a story that happened to him in his younger days, and he was using N-word to set off a point because that's how he's been treated. As a matter of fact, there was more specifically, it was a run-in with cops or a cop or cops at the time, and he was kind of recounting it for the writers' room, and somebody in there went to HR about it, and then HR kind of got back into him about it. And he did an op-ed about it somewhere, and he just up and quit because he didn't feel like he couldn't express himself. And he wasn't like he was calling anybody like I said, he was just recounting a story, so it wasn't nothing malicious about it. It's just that somebody kind of felt in their way and decided to go to HR about it. And I think the article also says that there's been a couple other people, like showrunners or whatever, who had gotten fired because they were actually being abusive to the writers or whatnot, because the writers' room is supposed to be all inclusive, and then another, which it is, but it's also supposed to be free to speak your mind, or at least the way they have it set up. I didn't know he was working on Discovery, so that was one takeaway from this. So I'm kind of, and he was only on the job for 3 weeks before this happened, so that's a whole nother thing. So I don't think anything he's had a hand in, may or may not have gotten out, or may not be getting out on screen. So that's the thing, you know. Even if you don't know about Walter Mosley, what's wrong with you? Devil in Blue Dress, folks. Read something, for God's sakes. Killing of Johnny Fry, also a good book, personally. Anyway, that's the thing. Next up, some sad news. Or sadder, as well, just as sad or sadder news. Someone was a Robert Axelrod, voice of Lord Zed in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and other stuff, dies at 70 years old. So yes, a lot of folks would know Robert Axelrod from Lord Zed, and you know, you'll be missed. But he's also done some more other things that you might know, like Digimon and some other voice work. But he's also an actor that has been in some other stuff, live action.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that was recent. That was just like a couple of days ago, as of this recording, like the 8th. So, next up,
The Matrix 4 gets a tasty working title. Okay.
Yeah. So they have
production, right? So the production title is
right, which is also kind of funny. It was like, why? What was the impetus of this? So the working title is called Project Ice Cream.
Right. I mean, when you see those signs telling you not to park there because Project Ice Cream is filming,
right,
that's what it is.
And I'd be like, well, shoot, I want to know what this is because I want some ice cream. That would be, if I ran into it, that would be my thinking.
That's the thing. I don't know how often you run into those things.
I don't. Well, I mean, I'm not in a place where they film heavily, so.
Right. I mean, like where you are, they go to the studios, but when they're filming on location here in the city, what I described is exactly what you get, which is you get signs that say no parking because a certain film is set to it is scheduled to film. Like by my where I go to church in the city, they were filming an episode of. This was just this past Sunday. I saw signs and crew blocking off with cones parking spots. Was it Madam Secretary, that CBS show with Taya Leone?
Sure. Okay.
So but when it's a TV show, they just put the title on.
Right.
When it's a movie, especially a movie where they want secrecy, they will put a code word up.
Right.
Like Luke Cage, right? The Luke Cage one was I forget what it was. I think it was called Tiara or something, or something relatively clever that you had to Google and be like, what production is this for? So
right, but at the same time, well, so one, they don't do any filming like that around here, so there wouldn't be seeing them like at the most. A lot of stuff gets I know there's a lot of concessions in North Carolina for stuff like that, and I think like probably the beach. A lot of times if they need beach stuff, they'll do that. But I have rarely ever seen or heard about anything here where I am. Put it that way, and I'm in the middle of the state. Now, there might have been one or two things, but that was like a long time ago. Anyway, that's irrelevant. So, but my takeaway from some of that is like if I saw something like that, like you see and know the stuff, I'd be like, well, shoot, what they filming in here? And I know you've done that, knowing, you
just jump on your phone and say, what is this? What is this working title for?
Right. It's like, is this something I'm interested in? See if I can get in here, because I know they do that to kind of deter people from that. But if you already know how it works, how to do that, that's not necessarily a deterrent at that point,
right?
Or as much
as a deterrent, yeah.
Right. Anyway, Harbinger. Or well, some people say Harbinger, but it's Harbinger. Switches Studios putting a Valiant cinematic universe in question. That's right, folks. They were still trying to do that thing. Bloodshot still is a thing, as we reported on last week. So yeah, they were trying to get a Valiant cinematic universe off for years, according to this article. I'm not sure how much I buy that, but Hollywood Reporter just broke the news that Harbinger has changed hands from Sony, which is releasing Bloodshot, to Paramount. And apparently the artist says, the author says, not again, Sony.
Oh gosh.
Everything about the project remains the same director, writer, blah 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 blah. But while reports are Sony had tentatively planned to shoot Harbinger this year, Paramount will kick the tires on the film a bit. So I mean, why would they need this when they got Spidey?
They're looking to build, man. It's
Please, they've been building on Spidey, and now that they've got,
you know what's funny?
What's that?
No, what's funny is that you just said earlier that you saw a trailer for Bad Boys 3, the most recent trailer.
Correct.
And I did not realize that was a Sony film.
Mm-hmm. It sure is.
And part of me thinks that the folks behind Sony Pictures are looking at that like, well, this is probably our last hurrah with these characters, since it takes so long to get them all on the same page.
Oh, for sure. And that's not saying that Sony doesn't have other stuff in the fire, because they have other studios and things that we don't know, that we don't necessarily associate with them directly. But we know Spider-Man. We know now, or at least he knows now, Bad Boys. But there are some studios that that are directly tied with Sony. Like they have some littler stuff that, oh yeah, that's Sony. So
well, Men in Black was Sony as well.
Exactly. Yeah. See, that's another big one. But so yeah, apparently. So, and I was kind of halfway joking as to about the why would they need this, but let's face it, there is kind of some truth to it. That's just me editorializing, so that's not necessarily why they got rid of it, but it probably is. Okay. Anyway, next up,
season 2 of the Umbrella Academy is adding 3 new cast members. So good for them.
Yeah, sure. I have not watched any of that show.
Neither have I.
Yeah. Power Rangers. Oh wait, so we're going to get into the comic book news. Excuse me. Power Rangers reveal new Omega Rangers heartbreaking origin, and I believe this is the issue that came out this week. I believe of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue number 42. Excuse me. The meaning of life and all that. But anyway, yeah. Apparently, I'm not up on this book, and then I'm like directly behind at this point. But yeah, a new character or a newish character is in the fold, and they have their backstory, and it's apparently a heartbreaker. I don't know that much about it. Next.
Spoiler alert about last week's Doomsday Clock.
I almost took this out because of that, because we kind of talked about it.
Right. So we discussed this just very quickly. Lex knew more about DC Universe's rebirth before anyone else. So
because of course he did.
Right, because he's Lex Luthor, and
Mm-hmm.
That's that.
He's basically this version. This world's Doom. We all know this, minus the scars and the armor. Although he does have his own set of armor. So
right.
Suicide Squad returning in new comic series from Injustice team. So Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. Excuse me. So, and apparently sounds like in true Suicide fashion, somebody's probably going to get it in the first issue. So there you go. Next.
So we talked about
this. Yeah.
All the lameness around Tim Drake's new superhero.
Oh, stop it. But hey, our very own Tim DOGG wrote this. So go check that out after you've read the
read the book first.
Read the issue first. Or if you don't care, then sure, go ahead and read the article.
Right, read the article first.
Right. So next up, DC's next big event, Hell Arisen, with Lexluthor versus Batman Who Laughs. But they are really trying to get a lot of mileage out of this Batman Who Laughs.
They love that, man. The spiky look. Jeez.
Yeah, I know. The whole goth thing. Weird. So sure, that's a thing that's coming up. Looks like James Tynion IV and Steve Epting will team up to create Year of the Villain Hell Arisen. What Tynion calls a DC event that pits Batman Who Laughs against Apex, the Apex Luthor. I was trying to blend that together some kind of way, but that's not working. Anyway, in the culmination of Year of the Villain, the Apex Lexluthor. That might be actually the name of this, the title of this episode. If I think about it, we'll see. Next up,
what?
The Apex Lexluthor.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Next up.
Oh, you love Mulan Delarian.
Oh, God. in this week's event Leviathan number 4, it's all the lameness. Bendis apparently came out and talked about the surprise characters that are revealed in event Leviathan number 4. This is what I was referring to when I spoke about the issue earlier in regards to Lois Lane pursuing her own angle, quote unquote, her own angle on events.
I believe I see what you did there, but I'm reading this article and I'm still, I see it, but okay. Sure. Next up, welcome to DC Universe Year 1. So this is an article from the DC Universe site. And yes, it has been a year since DC Universe has shown itself. Or just about a year, I want to say, because I think it started in... maybe it's right. I can't remember. I thought it started in October, but I'm probably wrong. It probably was September. So regardless, but this is an article saying about some stuff that they have on the site in relation to the anniversary. So which includes some video stuff and some recounting of some of the year 1 comic books that they have on the site already.
Okay.
Let's see. There's going to be a Harlequin celebration on the 10th, which has already passed, and something on the 11th, which guess what? Hey, has also already passed. So,
alrighty.
Next
up, DC editor Rob Levin has been named the Inhumanoids. No. It's the actual,
different
publication. It's a publishing line. The Humanoids Humanoids Publishing, and he is their new senior editor. So congratulations to him.
Were you trying to do a Visionaries thing? Is that where you were going for? Because Herculoids did not necessarily. I felt you. I felt your vision.
No, wasn't there an Inhumanoids?
There wasn't a Humanoid, yes.
Yeah, I think that's where the theme song was.
But I don't remember it going like, you know what? I don't know. That was one.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're gonna look for it.
But yeah, I know, right? So. Actually, you know what? There was a couple of things back in the day that kind of sound similar. So that could have been any number of them. Man, Visionaries. Anyway, Brazil. Oh, so I'm taking these next two. So Brazilian mayor blasts Marvel, orders police sweep of Young Avengers book. Yes, folks, the Young Avengers book that came out like 4 or 5 years ago.
Wait, I think it's more.
No, it is more actually. Excuse me. It was it came out in 2010 and 2012. Now Brazil didn't get it until 2016. So that's another thing. Oh wait, no, I take that back. Let's see, we've been circulating in Brazil. No, so it came out in 2010. It didn't come to Brazil until 2012, and then there's a new volume that came out in 2016. So there you go. Regardless, it's an old ass book that apparently the Brazilian mayor, who apparently was a former evangelical priest or something, and they're kind of strict about certain scenes of certain things, and then of course you have Hulkling and Wiccan kissing. Which was a note, and this was, mind you, Avengers Children's Crusade, not the actual volume, not the McKelvey volume, I think. So this was Children's Crusade. So right. That's an old story.
Yeah, this is Heinberg and Chung.
Yeah, this is an old ass story, and this is just coming up now for some strange reason. But apparently there was this got circulated. And the Rio de Janeiro's mayor, wanted the books off the shelf. And apparently there's more to the story in that it is the stuff saying mayor extends content crackdown beyond Young Avengers ban. So they're going further than just this book. And apparently they're alleging that it's pornographic content. It's not a pornographic content. It's just two dudes kissing. Like, come on, really? But again, I know there's, and somebody may or may not be sure the right end about it, but we kind of already know that, yeah, things are kind of strict. Yeah, or stricter in certain parts of the world, including there, because let's face it, we have our issues here in the States, but, it's worse in some other places.
Lame.
Pretty much. So that's sad and ignorant, and those people need to die. That's all I'm going to say.
By the way,
Humanoids.
Nice. Yes, that was a commercial, or was that the from
it's
the
the intro. Yeah, it's the intro to the show.
Yeah.
I have no idea why that particular thing sticks in my head, but
No, I get it. I get it. I'm with you.
earworm type thing. Okay.
No.
Next up, Marvel's Avengers. This is the video game. The alternate costume skins leaked out this week.
Yes, and you can take the next one actually, also, because there's a slight tie.
All right, and Marvel also announced a prequel comic for the Avengers video game, written by Jim Zub and illustrated by Paco Medina. It's actually pretty close to a leading creative team.
Well, so this, as noted, this is the same team that did Avengers: No Surrender.
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna say Zub got noticed from that, but he did start picking up a few. Actually, I think. Well, I think he was probably already on the way of getting champions at that point anyway. But he was definitely getting more work by the time that came out with Marvel. Not saying he wasn't before that, but I'm just saying, because like now he's co-writing with Slot, and he's got champions, and this was there, and I think he did some stuff for. No, that was part of No Surrender. Never mind, because I think that was specific to like especially the Conan parts. Anyway, regardless, so yeah, that's the thing. No surprise that this was going to happen, but yeah, it's the thing. No one is immune to the unstoppable force coming in. Contagion #1. So this is a miniseries from Marvel that's going to be on stands October 2nd with the creative team of Ed Brisson and a team of artists. A bunch of artists. I'm not going to go ahead and rattle off all of them, but at least 6 of them. And a seemingly unstoppable force has hit the streets of New York, indiscriminately hitting heroes and civilians and draining them of their life forces. This sounds like a job for Earth's Mightiest Heroes, but it's not. Contagion calls for Marvel street level superstars, but even they're not safe from this new infectious threat. And for some strange reason, I feel like Typhoid Mary is going to be involved, but I think they've already done that.
Okay.
This is speculation. That was purely speculation on my part. But yeah, as you see here from the pictures, the thing is involved. And there's a bunch of Morloids, according to this cover. And of course, like I said, the Defenders and quarter for that. So yeah, that's the thing that's coming. Next.
Incoming!
I know, right? I did the exact same thing every time I see this.
In the latest Marvel incoming teaser, there's a warning of a returning galactic threat. And that galactic threat kind of goes back a ways.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen teased returns and some returns in especially in the Guardians books in the Secret Wars. The Guardians miniseries and the secret as part of the Secret Wars tie-in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's been a while since we've seen the return. The character known as Korvac.
I was going to say, so it hasn't been as long as you think, although it's still even since the last time, because I think he was probably early like 2010, 2011. Might remember somewhere around that or before then, where Korvac kind of showed up somewhere. I might be off by a couple of years, but I know it's been in the last decade. But nevertheless, Korvac is an old Avengers thing from way back in the day. That has shown up like once or twice since then.
Mm-hmm.
So that ought to be interesting. And we thought in the MCU might have gotten, although we got a tie to him, but we didn't exactly get the whole thing in the MCU, which they didn't do the legwork for us, so I wouldn't be surprised if we were going to actually ever get that. But yeah, this is the tie-in we talked about, the protocol from earlier that he may or may not be involved in. I'm not convinced of that, but since it is a collective threat, supposedly, who knows? Anyway, if they do try to make Korvac happen again, I'd be, I guess, sure. Next up, Jean Grey, Wolverine take the cake on Mark Brooks's X-Men variant. So you can see the variant. I love Mark Brooks's work. He does some nice stuff. You should check out his Instagram also. But yes, I believe this is for X-Men #1.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, this is coming. And this is a variant for that. So cool. Next.
And X-Men's House of X death literally mirrors Phoenix's original demise. So for anyone who read House of X,
Mm-hmm.
this
we didn't talk about this. We talked about the issue, but we didn't talk about this particular thing.
Right. I'm just going to ring the spoiler bell because this was in last week's House of X issue.
Mm-hmm.
So Cyclops gets got, and it reflects a similar scene in the original Dark Phoenix, but with the Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. Or in the forthcoming of the Phoenix, that ends up happening from that. But yeah, apparently I don't think he's going to cut. We don't think he's going to turn into the Phoenix from that. No. We're just going to go out on a limb with that. But yeah, the shots apparently were noticed by someone on. Actually, it's like by Jordan D. White, an editor at Marvel, apparently, who, as you see on the video, says, "I see you," and he puts the pictures side by side of himself of Cyclops and Jean both getting got, and Pepe Larraz kind of confirms it and says, "Yep, you got me, you caught me." So that was cool. Like I saw that and I was like, "Huh, that was an interesting pose for him to be in," and turns out it was actually something.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong homage.
Mm-hmm. So cool beans. Have fun with your work. Last but not least, Freema Agyeman. I hope that's how you pronounce it. I need to. Anyway, returns to. I apologize for butchering her name. If that's it, if that's not it. Returns to the Doctor Who universe. So Martha Jones is back. Freema Agyeman reprises her role in a brand new audio adventure with Eve Miles of Torchwood. So that's cool. So, and it's also worth noting that Martha Jones was on Torchwood for like a episode or two, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And for the rest of us who don't watch, and for the rest of us who don't watch Doctor Who,
who? So, well, obviously now it just takes on a different reading because yes. But yes, so Martha Jones, who was a companion of the Simpsons Doctor, who ended up on Torchwood for a second, and Eve Miles, who played Gwen on, who's basically who's the lead on Torchwood with John Barrymore, who's on Arrow, or who has been on Arrow. He's not on it fully now, but Michael Merlin, he was on Torchwood first and on Doctor Who first, so which they pulled a lot of Doctor Who people from into the Arrowverse, I've noticed. So that's kind of funny in itself. But yeah, so this is a new audio audio adventure that is coming down the line. So you Doctor Who fans, have fun with that. I'm not saying I'm not one of them, but I'm just saying that I'm not caught up on a whole lot of stuff. So, and that is, folks, the end of the news. We got one more ad.
Our last ad read of the night is for Blue Apron's meal delivery service. Blue Apron. Fresh ingredients and incredible recipes delivered weekly to your door. Skip the grocery store and make incredible meals at home with Blue Apron. Always shipped free right to your home. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can get $30 off your first Blue Apron order. To place your first order with $30 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us. That's cspn.us. Then click on the Keep Our Podcasts free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down to the Blue Apron link and sign up for your first order. Blue Apron through cspn.us. Do it today.
All right, thank you, folks, for coming out here, being with us here tonight. Or if you've followed us, if you've gotten with us audio, or just happen to be up on this video at some point in the near future, or was here and you just didn't want to say anything, cool. We appreciate you all. So for myself, Roddycat, you can find me at Roddycat on Twitter, Newsnet Sneed on Twitter, CBCaps on Instagram, Agent _70 on Twitter and Instagram. PC_Dirt on Twitter, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com, and on the umbrella sites therein. Tim, DOGG98, the Osiris of this ish. You can find him there on Twitter. Also, CB Cron on Twitter, which is the Comic Book Chronicles account. Also, The KLIQ Nation, that's TheKLIQ on Twitter, and TheKLIQNation.com, which we need to really do something with. And also, of course, last but not least, Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off. You can find this here program on CSPN.us, the Lexluthor Podcast Network.
Do it today.
Also on Google Play, Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, Lexluthor Podcast Network's SoundCloud page, and Spotify. And we will be back next week for this locality. In this locality, that's how that goes. To have and keeping helping of some more comics faculties, something like that. I'll workshop that later. It doesn't really matter. For the crew and myself, peace and have a good night.